Stephen took a deep breath, feeling relieved. I just want to clean your car, sir. I need to earn some money to eat, he said, hoping for kindness. John, impressed by the boy's determination, allowed him to clean the car. Go ahead, clean it, John said. As Stephen worked quickly and precisely, John watched him closely. The boy's dedication was impressive, especially for someone so young. You're very good at this, John said, trying to start a conversation. Stephen paused for a moment, looked at John, and smiled. Thank you, sir. I try to do my best in everything I do. These simple, sincere words touched John deeply. This boy deserves a chance, John thought, amazed by Stephen's maturity. When Stephen finished cleaning the car, John handed him a large amount of money. Here's for your hard work, John said. But Stephen hesitated when he saw the large sum. Thanks, sir, but I only want to earn enough to eat today. I don't want charity. Want to work for my food, he said honestly, leaving John shocked. I don't want charity, just an opportunity. John was momentarily speechless, touched by the boy's integrity. Then, to John's surprise, Stephen handed back most of the money, keeping only a small amount for the work he had done. He really doesn't just want money, wants a chance to work, John thought, feeling a growing connection with the boy. What's your name? John asked. Stephen seemed surprised by the question, as if people rarely asked him about himself. I'm Stephen, sir, he replied hesitantly. Seeing the boy's shyness, John knew he wanted to help. Stephen, you're hungry, right? Let's go to the diner down the street and get something to eat. Afterward, my car will probably need another cleaning, John said, using the car as an excuse to spend more time with Stephen and talk to him. Stephen, surprised and grateful, accepted the offer. Thank you, sir, John smiled, happy that he had found a way to help Stephen without hurting his pride. Let's go then, John said, opening the car door. As they walked, John used the opportunity to learn more about Stephen. Where are your parents, Stephen? He asked gently, trying to understand the boy's life. Stephen lowered his head and spoke softly. I lost my parents some time ago. Since then, I've been on my own. John felt a pain in his heart upon hearing this. This boy has been through so much, John thought, feeling even more determined to help. You're very brave, Stephen. It's not easy living like this, John said, trying to comfort him. When they arrived at a small, simple diner, John ordered a full meal for Stephen. As they ate, John watched the boy with growing admiration. Although hungry, Stephen ate slowly, savoring every bite. Thank you, sir. This means a lot to me, Stephen said, his eyes shining with gratitude. John smiled and replied, You deserve it, Stephen. Working hard and being honest is rare these days. John knew he wanted to do something more permanent to help Stephen. He felt the eyes of the other customers in the diner on him, surprised to see a well-dressed man with a street boy. After the meal, John looked directly at Stephen and made a decision. Stephen, I really want to help you. Would you like to come to my house? This way, you won't have to worry about where to sleep or eat tomorrow. I promise I won't hurt you. I just want to help. Stephen hesitated for a moment, unsure if he could trust John, but something in John's eyes made Stephen feel safe. With tears in his eyes, Stephen asked, Are you serious, sir? John nodded firmly. Yes, I am. Let's go to my house. You're hungry, and you deserve a chance for a better life. Stephen, emotional and overwhelmed, accepted the offer. Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you. John smiled warmly. I know you won't. Stephen, let's go. We had a lot to do. As John drove home with Stephen, he felt a new sense of purpose. Maybe helping Stephen is the key to finding what's missing in my life. Doing good for those who need it, John thought, feeling hopeful. Meanwhile, Ashley Tess, John's mother, Saturday in her luxurious mansion, watching the perfectly manicured garden. She was a snobbish and prejudiced woman who cared only about social status and wealth. Her face often showed disapproval, especially regarding her son's choices. As she sipped her tea, she thought about the previous day. Yesterday, John was talking about our time in poverty before he changed our lives. My son should know that our family's image is everything. He shouldn't bring up such things in front of others. She reflected, remembering what John had said during dinner. Just then, John entered the house with Stephen by his side. The boy, still dirty and dressed in ragged clothes, had a glimmer of hope in his eyes. As soon as Ashley saw them, her face twisted in disgust. What is the meaning of this, John? She asked coldly. Staying calm, John replied, Mother, this is Stephen. He needs help, and I've decided to bring him here. Ashley looked the boy up and down, her disapproval obvious. This is unacceptable, she exclaimed. Walking closer to John, she continued, you can't just bring a street child into the house. Think about our reputation. John took a deep breath, knowing his mother would react this way. Mother, it's not about reputation. It's about doing what's right. Stephen needs us. Ashley scoffed, crossing her arms. And what will people say when they find out we are harboring a beggar? This isn't admissible, she argued. Stephen, feeling the tension and hostility, stepped back, but John placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. He's not a beggar, Mother. He's a boy who's had a tough life and deserves a chance. Ashley, still unconvinced, replied, John, you're being naive. These people just want to take advantage of us. He'll bring us problems. John stood firm. I believe in Stephen. He deserves a chance. Irritated, Ashley turned and walked toward the living room. You've always been stubborn, John, but this is too much. I won't allow him to stay here. John followed her, trying to stay calm. Mother, this is my house, and I've already made my decision. Stephen will stay. He needs a safe place, and I will provide that for him. Ashley stopped and faced him. If something goes wrong, it'll be your responsibility, she said, still irritated. John, feeling both frustrated and determined, responded, Okay, Mother, I accept that responsibility. Ashley, still skeptical, looked at Stephen with disdain. But don't think life will be easy here. I'll be watching you, she said harshly. A businessman was stopped at a traffic light when he noticed a boy begging nearby. As he rolled down the window of his limousine, he couldn't believe what the boy was capable of doing. Stephen, a 10-year-old boy, walked quickly through the streets of Miami. His thin body, dirty face, and worn-out clothes showed the tough life he lived on the streets. Barefoot and struggling daily, he survived by doing small jobs and begging at traffic lights. Despite his hardships, Stephen showed determination and dignity. I'll get enough for a piece of bread today, he thought as he walked toward a car waiting at a red light. He picked a simple car, hoping the driver would be generous. With an old rag, Stephen quickly and skillfully cleaned the windshield. The driver, a middle-aged man, rolled down the window and handed Stephen a few coins. Thank you, sir, Stephen said with a smile, hiding the hunger he felt. He knew they had to stay hopeful, even if he only got a little. As the afternoon wore on, the hot sun made Stephen feel tired, but he kept going. Just a few more cars, he whispered to himself, wiping sweat from his forehead. Then, he saw a luxury car coming in. With both hope and nervousness, decided to try his luck. The windows of the car were closed, but that didn't stop him. Come on, Stephen, you can do it, he thought as he moved toward the car. On his way, Stephen noticed another child, younger than him and looking even hungrier, sitting on the sidewalk. He stopped and, after counting his coins, decided the girl needed them more. She looked weaker and in greater need of help. Hey, are you hungry? Stephen asked her with a kind smile. The girl nodded, her big eyes filled with hope. Stephen handed her some coins and said, Take this, buy something to eat. I can't still earn more. The girl started crying, overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, I'm so hungry, she said, standing up with difficulty. Stephen helped her up and said, No need to thank me. I know how hard it is. Even though he was hungry himself, he ignored it to help her. Looking around, Stephen saw other boys struggling like him. This gave him strength to keep going, knowing he wasn't alone. I will make it, he thought, determined to continue. He walked to another traffic light, where a group of people was waiting to cross. With a brave smile, he approached a lady carrying heavy bags. Can I help you with your bags, ma'am? Stephen offered, hoping to earn a little money. The lady looked at him, surprised. You're so young to be working like this, she said with concern. Stephen smiled and replied, I have to work. Stephen always worked hard, carrying bags, cleaning cars, and helping with anything he could to earn some money for food. When the woman gave him a bag to carry and handed him a few coins as thanks, Stephen felt a bit of relief. Every little bit helps, he thought. At the end of that day, Stephen counted the coins he had earned, trying to see if it would be enough for a simple meal. Still a little short, he murmured, his stomach growling with hunger. Deciding to give it one last try, he headed to another traffic light, thinking, just need a few more coins. He approached another car with renewed courage and asked the driver if he could clean the windshield, hoping his effort would be rewarded. But the man angrily refused, shooing him away. Get out of here, But you'll make my car dirty, the man shouted. Frightened, Stephen bowed his head, afraid the man might hurt him. As the day ended, Stephen found a quiet corner in the square to rest. He watched the city lights and the people hurrying by. Even though he was tired and hungry, he kept hoping that tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow is a new day. Stephen, you will make it, he said to himself, staying optimistic despite the difficulties. He still believed in the kindness of people and the possibility of a better future. Meanwhile, John Bigas, a middle-aged man with a strong and confident appearance, walked through the busy streets of Miami, heading to an important meeting. Wearing an impeccable suit, John looked every bit the successful businessman. He had built his fortune through hard work and determination, starting from nothing and overcoming many challenges along the way. Today will be a decisive day, John thought, adjusting his tie before entering a grand office building. Inside the luxurious office, John was greeted with respect. His employees admired him, knowing how inspiring his journey had been. He sat at his desk, surrounded by contracts and important documents, feeling proud as he reflected on how well his company was doing. Yet, despite his success, John felt a sense of emptiness that even all his wealth couldn't fill. Why do I still feel this void? He wondered, looking at an old photo of his parents on his desk. John remembered his humble childhood, where every penny mattered, and hard work wasn't just an option, but a necessity. He was proud of what he had overcome, but thinking about his beginnings also made him feel uncomfortable. What would my parents say if they saw me now? He thought, flipping through the papers on his desk. Despite all they had achieved, John felt like something important was still missing in his life. Maybe that's what I'm lacking, the cause. Something beyond what money can buy. He pondered, feeling a bit sad. As the day went on, John got busy with meetings and negotiations, always maintaining his confident and firm demeanor. He was not only successful, but also respected for his honesty and integrity. Even though John was successful and respected for his values, it didn't fill the emptiness he felt inside. Business is business, but what really matters at the end of the day? He wondered as he gazed out his office window during a coffee break. Watching the busy city below, John realized, I need to find a purpose beyond just making money. Later, during a meeting, one of John's associates mentioned a charity event happening in the city. John, who usually focused only on business, found himself interested. Maybe that's what I need, something more meaningful. He thought, helping others might help me find the missing piece. He reflected, remembering his difficult childhood when hope was all he had. As John drove through the streets of Miami, he noticed people sleeping on the streets, and his heart ached. I was once in a tough situation too, he thought, recalling the hunger and struggles his family faced when his parents couldn't find work. Stopping at a traffic light, John looked out the window and saw a boy approaching with a dirty rag in his hand. The boy's eyes were filled with determination, but he hesitated as he got closer. Please, sir, don't hurt me, Stephen said nervously. Yesterday, a man was aggressive and threatened to hurt me if I came near his car. John, surprised by the boy's fear, rolled down the window and responded calmly. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. What do you want? Bye.
I couldn't believe it when I found a letter from Diana in my mailbox. Diana had just passed away, and we had her funeral yesterday. She was always so kind to me, especially since I got married. We used to go out to eat and shop together, and we became close friends even though she was older than me. I was really sad when she suddenly passed away. Even after her funeral, it was hard to believe she was gone. So when I saw a letter from Diana, I was shocked. I hurried to read it and discovered something surprising. Diana had arranged for this letter to reach me after she passed away. She had asked the church's pastor to give it to me. In the letter, Diana told me to open a secret door in her closet at my in-laws' house. She explained how to do it and said I should go alone. I checked the time and knew everyone would be out. Jimmy, Diana's brother-in-law, his wife, and their kids were at school or work. So I went straight to my in-laws' house, used my key, and followed Diana's instructions. Luckily, the secret door opened, and inside, I found a message. It said, My name is Olivia. I'm 35 years old, and I work as a web designer from home. 5 years ago, I married Fred, who is 4 years older than me. We were introduced by a friend, and we still have a great relationship. However, despite our desire for children, my husband Fred and I hadn't been able to conceive. Diana was always supportive during this tough time. She would tell me not to worry, and she often cheered me up by suggesting we go to a new waffle shop by the station to lift my spirits. Diana's encouragement helped me overcome my worries about not having children. Even though I still wanted kids, Fred and I decided not to pursue intensive fertility treatments and instead hoped for things to happen naturally. Fred traveled a lot for work, so when he was away, Diana and I would spend time together, going out for meals or shopping. We became good friends despite our age difference. Diana lived nearby, in the same house as my brother-in-law Jimmy and his family, who had 3 children. While Diana got along well with them, Jimmy and his wife weren't as understanding. They would often make hurtful remarks about our childlessness. Brittany, Jimmy's wife, would say things like, "Olivia, still no kids? We have 3 adorable ones, you know. It's like you're dishonoring your parents by not having any. Just cut ties with Diana already." Jimmy would join in, adding insults like, "Brittany's right." Well, Fred has always been a bit of a loser. Even if you had kids, they'd probably be losers too. At first, Fred and I would defend ourselves against their hurtful comments. Since Jimmy and his wife never listened to us and continued with their hurtful behavior, Fred and I started avoiding them as much as possible. They were awful to us but pretended to be nice in front of Diana, so she never knew their true nature. We didn't want to worry Diana, so we never told her about Jimmy and his wife's behavior. One holiday, Fred, Diana, and I planned to go out for a meal. We went to my in-laws' house at the agreed time, expecting Diana to be ready at the front door as usual. But this time, she wasn't there. We waited for a while, thinking she'd come out soon. After 5 minutes, then 10, we started to worry. Diana wasn't answering her phone either. Getting anxious, we rang the doorbell, but there was no response. We used our spare key to get inside. "Hey, Mom," Fred called out, but there was still no answer. Feeling uneasy, we searched the house and found Diana collapsed in a room. I screamed and ran to her, while Fred called an ambulance. The house was empty, as Jimmy and his family must have been out. The ambulance arrived in about 8 minutes, but sadly, Diana passed away. It was a stroke. Fred and I couldn't believe she was suddenly gone from our lives. We cried so much, it felt like we'd never stop. Despite our grief, we had to prepare for the funeral. We couldn't stay sad and withdrawn forever. The funeral was small, with close relatives and family. Jimmy, Diana's eldest son, acted as the family representative. We coordinated with Jimmy for the arrangements, but I sensed he wasn't truly mourning Diana's death. At the funeral, he fulfilled his duties as a family representative, but it seemed minimal. After a brief chat with the relatives, I called for Fred as I had left the gathering abruptly. The relatives seemed displeased and looked at Jimmy with disapproval. At the meal with relatives after the funeral, Jimmy was the first to sit down and didn't bother getting up even when Fred greeted him. He just drank beer, and Brittany did the same. Fred and I hurriedly went around thanking the relatives for coming and sharing memories of Diana. Jimmy and Brittany's children were too busy playing with their handheld gaming devices and laughing loudly, which seemed inappropriate for a post-funeral gathering. None of Jimmy's family seemed to mourn Diana's death. The relatives sensed this and avoided speaking with Jimmy and his wife, choosing to share farewells and memories with Fred and me instead. Despite the relatives' changed attitudes, Jimmy's family's behavior remained the same. They kept ordering beer, discussing inheritance and vacation plans, which felt disrespectful considering how much Diana had done for them. I couldn't help but feel disdain toward Jimmy's family. The next day, Fred left early to take care of formalities alone. At home, I checked the mailbox for the newspaper and noticed an envelope inside. I picked it up and was surprised to see it was addressed to me from Diana. How could there be a letter from Diana? I went back to the living room to open it. Inside the letter was something unexpected. Diana had arranged with the church's pastor to send this letter to me after her passing. It included instructions to open a closet in Diana's room at my in-laws' house, find and open a hidden door within the closet, and contact a lawyer Diana had dealt with. The final instruction was to ensure. I carefully opened the closet alone and read Diana's letter repeatedly. Though Diana had slender handwriting, it was bold and forceful. Her powerful signature seemed to embody her essence. Deeply moved, I checked the clock. It was 9:00 a.m., and the in-laws' house should be empty now. I quickly got ready and headed there. The children would be at school, and Jimmy and Brittany likely left early. I had seen on Brittany's social media that they were going out together, despite it being the day after Diana's funeral. If the post was accurate, no one would be at the house. I needed to go now. I might not get another chance. Using my key, I entered the house slowly. The absence of Diana's welcoming smile made my heart ache. Pushing back my pain, I went into Diana's room, opened the closet, and reached for the hidden door as instructed in the letter. Thankfully, it opened without a problem. I sighed with relief and checked what was inside. There were the items Diana mentioned in the letter and an additional document. I was overcome with Diana's love and almost cried, but I knew I had to leave quickly. It would be disastrous if someone came back and found me there, especially since Diana's letter instructed that I do this alone. I took the documents with me and returned home. I contacted the lawyer mentioned in Diana's letter to inform them of her passing. Just as I was about to contact Fred and Jimmy's family to plan a gathering, I received a message from Brittany. She said they had important news and wanted everyone to gather at the in-laws' house this week. What could Brittany possibly want to discuss? I had no idea. Feeling skeptical but uneasy about refusing, I decided to accept Brittany's suggestion to gather at the in-laws' house over the weekend. When Fred and I arrived, I felt tense. Jimmy and Brittany had unpleasant smirks on their faces, and their children were not around, likely left with someone else. As soon as we sat down, they presented us with a document. "This is Diana's will," Brittany declared confidently. The signature on the will was indeed Diana's, and it stated that all her assets were to be inherited by Jimmy and his wife. It says here that we, the couple, are to inherit the entire estate. So you guys won't get a single cent from the inheritance. Too bad? Jimmy laughed vulgarly, his face twisted in an ugly grin. Fred was perplexed, but I silently stood up and returned with Mr. Smith, the lawyer who had been waiting outside. Jimmy and Brittany were confused by the sudden appearance of the lawyer, and Fred was surprised, not knowing the lawyer had been waiting outside. "This is Mr. Smith, a lawyer who Diana had been close with for many years," I introduced briefly. Jimmy and Brittany's expressions turned to anger. "A lawyer? Why did you bring someone like that here?" Jimmy shouted. "It was Diana's instruction. She wanted Mr. Smith to help with the property settlement agreement to make things smoother," I explained. "We don't need a lawyer." Jimmy slammed his hand on the table, gesturing to Diana's will. Mr. Smith calmly raised his hand. "Are you certain this document was entirely written by Diana herself?" he asked. "Of course it is," Jimmy replied loudly. Mr. Smith shook his head sadly. "This cannot be recognized as a valid will. A holographic will must be entirely handwritten by the person themselves." Mr. Smith pointed out that while the word will at the beginning and Diana's signature at the end were handwritten, the rest of the document looked like it had been printed from a computer. The once noisy room fell silent. In a panic, Jimmy reached for the will. But that changed nothing. The printed text remained unchanged. "Could this will have been forged?" Mr. Smith asked calmly. Jimmy and Brittany visibly trembled. "What are you talking about? We would never do such a thing." "Why are you being so paranoid? And even if it was forged, what then?" Brittany responded anxiously. "Forging a will is a serious crime," Mr. Smith explained. Jimmy and Brittany's faces turned pale. They were flustered, shouting incoherently and making excuses. At this moment, Mr. Smith delivered the crucial information. Olivia had a notarial will, rendering the presented will invalid. Jimmy and Brittany were astonished, their eyes wide open. "What's that?" "We weren't informed," they exclaimed. The letter from Diana that I had received mentioned that a notarial will was hidden behind the secret door in the closet. We didn't know about it until we received the letter from Diana recently. Diana revealed the location of this will in the letter, which contained not only practical matters, but also explanations about why the notarial will was made and why it was disclosed to me. Diana had been feeling her health decline recently and prepared a will, suspecting that Jimmy and his spouse might tamper with it. Despite my assumption that Diana was completely unaware of Jimmy and his spouse's true nature, it appears Diana had some inkling of their greed for money. The notarial will stated that the estate was to be equally divided between Jimmy and Fred. Jimmy and Brittany were in shock, their eyes wide with astonishment. At that moment, Jimmy seemed to have an epiphany and exclaimed loudly, "That's right. But the beneficiary of Mom's life insurance is me, isn't it? It must be set to me, the eldest son." I announced in a cold voice, in addition to the notarial will, Diana also entrusted me with a life insurance policy. I am named as the beneficiary. Inside the hidden door of the closet, there was not only the notarial will, but also the life insurance policy. Jimmy and his wife stared at the documents in disbelief. "I didn't hear about this. I don't know anything about this," Jimmy protested, banging on the table. "It's normal not to be notified when the beneficiary of a life insurance policy is changed," I replied calmly. Fred, looking puzzled, asked me, "When did Mom entrust Olivia with these?" I had no idea. Did she not want to tell me? I smiled at Fred and explained, "It was written in the letter from Diana. She wanted to tell you as well, but it was safer to entrust it to just me to avoid Jimmy and his wife catching on." "I see. You and Mom were really close after all," Fred remarked. While Fred and I were talking, Brittany interrupted us hysterically. "I won't accept this. Why should you, whom never even showed Diana your children, inherit her estate? This is ridiculous. I can't accept this at all." "That's right. You childless ingrates don't deserve Mom's estate. We lived with her just for the inheritance. It's outrageous to split it. The entire estate should be ours," Jimmy exclaimed angrily. Brittany was red-faced and yelling, continuing with her selfish claims. "We have 3 children, you know. As compensation for not giving Diana grandchildren, you should relinquish the entire estate to us for our children's future. We who gave her 3 grandchildren are far more worthy than you, so the estate should all be ours." Unfazed by Brittany's fervor, I calmly stated, "What you're saying is nonsensical. Please calm down, Brittany." Infuriated by my composed demeanor, Brittany yelled, "Your smug attitude is infuriating. Just give us the money, useless woman." She then lunged at me. Fred and Mr. Smith quickly intervened, but Brittany managed to punch me in the head before they could stop her. "Ouch!" I cried out. Brittany's hands, adorned with several large rings, felt like brass knuckles, causing a dull pain that made me cry out, "Stop it." Fred and Mr. Smith pulled Brittany away, but she still unrestrainedly reached out to me again in her frenzy, demanding, "Give me the inheritance. I deserve it all more than you do. I have 3 children after all." Brittany's eyes were bloodshot, her face demonic. Jimmy encouraging Brittany in such a manner enraged Fred, who called the police. "Go on, do it," he urged. Soon after their arrival, Fred and Mr. Smith explained the situation to the police. Jimmy and his spouse were then taken away by the police. Left behind, Fred and I thanked Mr. Smith and decided it was best for him to go home for the day. What was supposed to be just a discussion about creating a property settlement ended up being a terrible ordeal. Fred and I solemnly agreed to visit later with some sweets as an apology. Fred was very concerned about me being hit by Brittany, but when I told him that the headache had completely subsided, he seemed relieved. Amidst the tumultuous developments, I muttered to myself, that was quite an intense experience. Then, Fred shared his thoughts with me. "You know, Brittany always makes a big deal about her kids. She's always said how great she is for giving Mom 3 grandchildren. Don't you think she's too obsessed with money?" "Indeed," I replied. Brittany had always overly emphasized her children, and her greed for money earlier was intense. "Well, yes," Fred continued. Even with the inheritance, Diana wanted to divide it equally. Brittany's desire to claim everything was abnormal, and her terrifying demeanor while hitting me was chilling. Fred fell silent, lost in thought. "What's wrong? Is something bothering you?" I asked, unsure of what Fred was getting at. "Yeah, there's something I've been thinking about," Fred replied. "I want to suggest to my brother that we should do DNA testing for his 3 children." I was taken aback by Fred's unexpected suggestion. DNA testing. Yes, and I'm thinking of suggesting an investigation into Brittany's background too. Something just doesn't sit right with me. It's just a hunch. Although I felt it might be unnecessary, I knew Fred's instincts had often been right in the past. "All right, if you think so, let's propose it to Jimmy." When Fred brought up the matter with Jimmy, Jimmy ridiculed and yelled fiercely at him. "Just because you can't have kids, don't go doubting mine," Jimmy protested, snatching the DNA testing information from Fred as they parted, indicating some underlying concern on his part. The first results from the DNA testing of Jimmy and the children revealed that the 2 youngest were not biologically related to Jimmy. I had my suspicions about the youngest since they didn't really resemble either parent, but the middle child too. Fred was speechless. Perhaps motivated by the results, Jimmy also conducted a thorough investigation into Brittany's background. It was revealed that Brittany had relationships with multiple men even before marrying Jimmy. Moreover, she had recently been discovered by the wives of her lovers, who then demanded compensation from her. Brittany, who spent more time at home than Jimmy, had been meticulously hiding this correspondence. The total amount of compensation demanded was far beyond what could be covered by Brittany's salary or savings. As a result, Brittany was desperately trying to secure Diana's entire estate for herself. Naturally, this led to a violent confrontation between Jimmy and Brittany, throwing objects at each other and engaging in a physical fight. Their confrontation escalated to the point where blood was shed, and a neighbor, unable to tolerate the noise any longer, called the police. The arriving officers ended up taking both parties away. Already under scrutiny for forging Diana's will, now they had committed assault as well. When the police investigated the 2, it seems they uncovered numerous other offenses, including theft and harassing wealthy individuals. As a result, Jimmy and his spouse were sentenced to prison. Fred and I were deeply troubled about what to do with the 3 children left behind. With Diana gone, we were their closest relatives. After considering taking in Brittany and Jimmy's children, we ultimately decided against it. The children had fully absorbed their parents' attitudes, openly disparaging us as incapable and childless. The eldest, Ricky, who was 14, was old enough to understand right from wrong, and even the youngest, at 7, should have had some sense of appropriate behavior. Yet each time they saw us, all 3 sneered and hurled insults. Even with their parents' arrest and being at the heart of the turmoil, their attitudes remained unchanged. "We'd be doing you childless losers a favor by letting you raise us," Ricky remarked. Faced with such hostility, we felt neither love for the children nor the belief that we could raise them to be decent individuals. In the end, we contacted Brittany's parents and decided to cease all involvement with the children. It seemed the children themselves understood our firm stance, as Ricky remarked. "We'd rather stay in a rundown house than stay with a useless couple without kids." We felt this was for the best, especially since they expressed such sentiments. It's worth noting that we never disclosed to the children the fact that the 2 younger ones were not biologically related to Jimmy. Whether to reveal the truth or not is something we've left to Jimmy, Brittany, and their relatives. Fred and I decided to use the estate Diana left us to make a fresh start by moving to a distant location. It was a place rich in nature with lots of greenery, and both Fred and I were able to fit in quickly. There's a charming waffle shop near our new home, and every time we pass by, I think of Diana and how I would have loved to take her there if she were still alive. Soon after we moved, I was blessed with the child I had long wished for. When I used the pregnancy test and saw the positive result, I couldn't help but shout in surprise and overwhelming joy. Later, when I went to the obstetrician-gynecologist and had it confirmed by the doctor, I was assured that I was indeed pregnant without a doubt. Fred and I embraced, both of us shedding tears of joy. I couldn't help but think how happy Diana would have been if she were still alive to witness this. Additionally, the business plan I have been quietly preparing is progressing well. Both Fred and I are working hard for our forthcoming child, leading fulfilling lives filled with happiness. Hi everyone, my name's Taylor. I'm a single mom who's been through a lot to raise my son Eric. Many single moms have supportive families, and I thought I did too. But it turns out I was wrong. I found out the hard way. Thankfully, I was able to stand up to the people who tried to mess up my and my son's life. My ex-husband, Carl, is awful. Just thinking about him makes me sick. There was a time when I was really in love with him, but things got bad after we got married. Carl was great when we were dating, but as a husband, he was a nightmare. He became controlling and then abusive. I stayed in that marriage for over 8 years because he manipulated me and made me feel like I had to stay. At first, I thought my son deserved a father, so I didn't leave right away. Things got worse one day when Eric was 5. Carl started hitting me really hard, and my poor son saw me in pain and tried to stop his dad. But Carl was so angry that he ended up pushing Eric to the floor. That was the breaking point for me. I called Child Protective Services, CPS, and the police, and they helped keep Carl away from us. But he was determined to get back at me. He said, "You think you can run away from me, Taylor? That will never happen. Sooner or later, I will have you and my son back in my house. Just wait and watch. We're getting a divorce, Carl. There's no way I'll allow you near me and my son again, even if we divorce. I'll find a way to protect Eric. I am his dad, and I have rights." Carl's behavior and his violent history made me very scared. My son was deeply affected and had to go to therapy to cope with what happened. After a long court battle, Carl and I were finally divorced. But that wasn't the end of it. Moved far away to live near my parents and sister to be safe from Carl. I even got restraining orders against him. It was the most horrible time of my life. Carl never knew exactly where I moved. He could have guessed, but he didn't have my exact address. Being near my family made me feel safe again. However, my parents weren't really supportive of my decision to divorce. They asked, was it really necessary to get a divorce? Couldn't you two have gone to therapy and worked things out? It's not a big deal. Poor little Eric has to lose his dad over your problems. That's so unfair. He must be devastated not being able to see his dad. I was shocked. Are you serious right now? Carl used to beat me up, Mom. He even put his hands on Eric. My son was only trying to protect me. How can you not see what a monster Carl is? Mom, Dad, you need to be more sympathetic toward Taylor. She's been through a lot. You have no right to make her feel guilty. She did the right thing. At first, my parents tried to talk me into letting Eric see his dad, but I never allowed it. They were never happy with my decision. They kept saying, "Why don't you let Carl visit Eric? He must miss his son." How would you feel if I wasn't around when you were growing up? I know I would have been devastated. Taylor, you grew up in a household with 2 parents. You can't be. You're so selfish with Eric. He deserves his father's love. Soon he'll start resenting you for keeping his dad out of his life. What are you even talking about? Eric is terrified of his dad. He begs me not to let him near us again. He has no desire to see his dad, and neither do I. You must be influenced by all the terrible things you've heard about Carl. Dad, if Carl was a good man and a loving father, he wouldn't have hit me in front of Eric, or at all. No matter how hard I tried, they wouldn't agree with my decision. But as time passed, they seemed to accept it. They were close to Eric and made great-grandparents. Eric bonded with them and his Aunt Blair. I think part of why my parents stopped pushing me was that I was financially supporting them. Blair and I sent them money each month because Dad doesn't have a good job and Mom doesn't work. Money might have been why they stopped bringing it up. Eric started school nearby, and I had a good job in an office. Things were going well, and I was happy surrounded by family. I had no idea my loved ones could be so awful to me. The second biggest betrayal of my life happened just a year after I left Carl. I was getting ready for a business trip to another city. I couldn't take Eric with me because there were no childcare options at work. I was stuck, wondering what to do with Eric, when my mom and dad suggested a plan. So, I heard you'll be leaving for a business trip soon. Your dad and I have been thinking about babysitting Eric for you. We can stay at your house and take care of both Eric and the house. Are you sure about this? Eric can be a handful, plus leaving your apartment empty could be a hassle. It's only for a few days, so I don't think it will be much trouble. We love Eric, and he loves us too. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to spend these days with us. Yeah, the two of us can stay here and babysit for you. Your house will be safe when you go on this trip. It's like getting two benefits in one. Since they insisted so much, I agreed to let them babysit Eric and stay at my house until I returned. I felt satisfied with the arrangements because I trusted my parents completely. Now I know I made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have trusted them at all. My business trip started a week later. I flew out at night after saying goodnight to Eric. I had to leave a day early to prepare for a meeting with a big client the next morning. Called my parents and Eric after reaching the hotel, and everything seemed normal. I had no idea what was about to happen that night while I was in my hotel room preparing for my meeting the next day. Blair called me, and for some reason, it made me nervous. I thought something might be wrong at home. Picked up the call, feeling anxious. Hey, Taylor, have you already flown out for your business trip? Yes, Blair. I arrived yesterday. It's not a long trip. Why? What's wrong? Did you leave Eric with our parents? Yes, Taylor. I think you made a mistake. I don't think you should have left Eric with them. I think they're planning something, and you won't like it. What do you mean? Tell me everything right now. You're scaring me. I think Mom and Dad might try to make Eric meet with Carl. They've been against your decision to get the restraining orders. You know how much they disapproved of your divorce and everything. I have a bad feeling they'll take Eric to Carl. No. Mom and Dad can't do that. There must be some misunderstanding. They didn't approve of the divorce, but they went inside with an abuser. I know you trust them a lot, but please be careful. If you need anything, I'm here. Thanks, Blair. I'll be careful. Don't worry. Blair's words made me very uneasy, so I decided to call my parents and check in with them. Hey, Mom, could you put Eric on the phone? I want to talk to him. Sure, Taylor. Hold on. Mom, are you there? Hi, Eric. I'm just checking in. Is everything okay? Are you having a good time? Mom, I need to tell you something. Grandma and Grandpa called Dad. Oh my God, my phone is about to die. I'm so sorry. Taylor, now I have to charge my phone. Why don't you call back later? Eric is fine and playing with us. You don't have to worry about anything. Take care. Bye. Something about the way Eric tried to talk to me made me suspicious, especially when Mom snatched the phone away before he could finish his words. My head was spinning from the situation, so I decided to check the security camera footage. I didn't have cameras inside the house, but I had them outside. Lo and behold, in my driveway was my ex-husband's car. I was shocked. I remembered the footage and saw Carl's car parked at my house. My mom had opened the door for him. I was furious and scared for Eric's and my own safety. Carl wasn't supposed to have my address. I even had a restraining order against him. He shouldn't have been near my son. I called my parents immediately, and I recorded the call. Mom, why the hell is Carl at my house? What's going on? Who permitted you to let him in? God, you need to relax, Taylor. Carl is not here. Why would you even say such a thing? Mom, I can see his car parked in my driveway. Did you forget that I have security cameras outside? I saw you open the door for him. There was a long silence on their end. Neither of them spoke. I can tell I've made them nervous, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. Look, I know you're upset at Carl and us, but you're being very unreasonable. You need to cut us some slack. Yes, I'm very disappointed in you, Taylor. You can't separate a son from his father. Eric needs Carl in his life. You're not being a good mom. Please tell me you're joking. Carl physically abused me. He even hit Eric when he tried to save me. How can you allow Carl back into his life? That was a long time ago, Taylor. We must forgive people. He's changed. Your stupid restraining order was causing a lot of problems. Yes, so your mom and I decided to take matters into our own hands. Since you wouldn't do it, we gave Carl our address and reunited father and son. They're so happy together. Mom, Dad, I'll give you exactly 5 minutes to kick Carl out. If you don't, there will be consequences. Don't threaten us, Taylor. We're your parents. You're 3,000 miles away. Carl will stay here as long as he wants. We're planning a picnic tomorrow. Now I'm hanging up before you talk any more nonsense. Mom said that and simply hung up on me. I literally gave them 5 minutes to kick Carl out. But when 5 minutes passed, his car was still in the driveway. I'd had enough at that point. I felt scared and betrayed, so I quickly called law enforcement. I gave them the rundown of the situation and told them to arrest Carl. I also instructed them to take Eric from my parents and give him to Blair. The police acted fast and reached my house within 5 minutes. Staying near a police station was the best decision of my life. I saw them confront my parents and Carl through the CCTV footage. My mom and dad looked panicked as the police went in to arrest Carl. Mom called me and said, "Taylor, what is wrong with you? Did you call the cops on us?" Carl could go to jail. He will go to jail, Mom. And so will you if you don't leave my house right now. I don't want you and Dad on my property again. I've called Blair. She will come and take Eric. You will never come near us again. How dare you, Taylor? You are a horrible woman. I wish you were never born. You cannot kick us out and take our grandchildren from us. We won't let that happen. Good luck with that, Mom and Dad. The police will stop and arrest you if you do anything stupid. They know that Eric will go with Blair. You can't do this. We have grandparent rights. We will sue you. Good luck trying to fight me in court. It'll be fun to see the judge's reaction when she realizes that you brought an abusive man in my house despite a restraining order. You'll be laughed out of court. Before either of my parents could reply, the police came out with handcuffs. Carl was escorted to the police car and put in the back seat. It gave me relief and satisfaction to see him back with the police. Then the police started to talk to my parents. They were flustered, and my dad was starting to shout at the cops. I'm sure they were trying to argue about Eric. Right then, my sister Blair showed up. She showed the cops her ID and took Eric with her. My parents tried to stop her, but the police intervened and kept them at bay. Then the cops stayed behind until my parents gathered their stuff and left the premises. My sister locked my house and took the keys from them. My parents tried to call and scream at me about the whole situation, but I didn't answer their calls. They started texting me with some weird messages, so I recorded all their texts because they were getting really interesting. What you did today wasn't right, Taylor. There will be consequences for this. You have no right to take Eric away from us. I can't believe you're my daughter. I hate you. You won't be able to keep us away, Taylor. You're a working woman. You won't be with Eric all the time. We'll get visitation from the court, and then we'll take Eric away from you. One CPS call from us can take Eric away. If you think you're smart, we're much smarter. We'll call CPS and tell them bad stuff. They'll place Eric in our care, and he'll never return to you. We know where Eric goes to school. We know your address. We'll find a way to be with him. You can't stop us. If you act crazy, we'll take him away from you. You'll never see him again. My parents are not only horrible, but also very foolish. They still expect that everything will go their way. They had no idea what I was going to do. Only time will show them. Meanwhile, Carl had already made a huge mistake by teaming up with my parents. He would suffer as well. I quickly finished my work and returned home as soon as possible. Blair kept Eric safe, and he was staying at her house. Eric was extremely relieved to see me again. "Mom, you came back. I thought you wouldn't come back for me." "Eric, what are you saying?" "I went on a business trip. Of course, I was coming back. Dad said you had left me, Mom. He said he would take me away with him and showed me pictures of his house and everything. I was scared. I didn't want to go with him." "Eric, listen to me. I will never let Carl take you or even be near you again. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you." I spent a long time consoling Eric and making sure he was okay. Apparently, Carl was talking about me abandoning him and how he was there to take Eric away. I was furious at Carl. CPS did get involved and heard Eric's account. They recommended therapy, and Eric is already going to one. I have also signed up for group therapy for both of us. Our therapist is great and really helps us deal with our trauma. All the documentation of crimes committed by Carl was used by my lawyer in court. He was charged with attempted kidnapping and violating a restraining order. He's looking at jail time. I'm currently in the process of terminating Carl's rights to Eric. My son deserves a good dad, not an abuser like Carl. My lawyer is skilled, and we are hoping for a smooth process. As for my parents, they tried to sue me for grandparent rights, but the judge dismissed the case after seeing my court history and the text they sent. I went a step ahead and got restraining orders against them, which the judge approved right away. Currently, I have moved with my son to a different state. I got a promotion at work and took a higher position in a different city, which helped me move away from my parents. Blair visits me from time to time and has cut off contact with our parents. She's even considering moving to my city. My parents are having a hard time financially since Blair and I stopped helping them. They were forced to look for extra jobs, and lawyer fees drained their savings, making them financially unstable. Meanwhile, my son and I are thriving in this new environment. I have no intention of ever contacting my parents or allowing Carl to traumatize my son again. I have been unfaithful. I can't live with you any longer. We need to separate. My wife Lily told me one day at dinner. It came out of nowhere, but it was typical for Lily to suddenly announce her decisions. Once Lily made up her mind, she never changed it. So even with big decisions that affected both of us, I didn't argue much. I never thought getting a divorce was okay, but at that time, I felt helpless. If Lily cheated or wanted a divorce, there was nothing I could do. This was because the company I worked for went bankrupt due to the economic crisis in the late 2000s. After losing my job, I desperately searched for a new one, not just for myself, but for us. For Lily's sake, I sent my resume to dozens of companies. However, I'd only managed to get interviews with 3 of them, and I didn't make it to the final stage with any of them. Despite having about 5 years of experience at a subsidiary of a major automotive manufacturer, it didn't seem to matter. I felt my spirit break. I remembered how lucky I felt when I got the job at my previous company. Receiving that job offer letter was the happiest moment of my life. My biggest challenge in job hunting was the interviews. I was already uncomfortable with public speaking, and many companies used group interviews, which made it even harder for me. The company where I was accepted had a group discussion as part of the selection process. At the table, There were students who took the lead in expressing their opinions, others who summarized everyone's ideas and presented new ones, and some who pointed out flaws in others' opinions. Everyone was desperate to impress the interviewers, just like me. But I was overwhelmed by the atmosphere and couldn't articulate even a tenth of what I had in mind. After the discussion ended, I felt deeply discouraged by my inability to contribute anything. I thought to myself, there's no way I would pass, not even by some stroke of luck. When I received the job offer letter, I was convinced it must be some kind of mistake. I checked the contents of the envelope, and Lily, who was beside me, rejoiced as if it were her own achievement. Believe in yourself. People who truly understand your worth will recognize it, Lily said, patting my back. Lily and I met in a university club since we both entered the Faculty of Law. Before the first lecture, Lily and a few others entered the classroom, and I was intrigued by Lily's lively presentation about the club. Shortly after we started our studies, a male friend and I peeked into the club room, and it was Lily who explained the club to us. The club, despite its formal-sounding name, the Legal Research Society, was a casual group where the main purpose was to foster connections through drinking parties and sports events. Lily played the role of a coordinator for new club members and efficiently carried out her responsibilities. As I tend to be more laid back by nature, there was something about Lily that initially attracted me to her. During the welcome party for new club members, the topic of our hometowns came up, and I discovered that Lily and I were from the same area, just about 2 train stops away from each other. That became the starting point for us to bond, and we often found ourselves excitedly discussing our shared hometown experiences. I believe another reason we could easily talk was because I had taken a gap year, so I was the same age as Lily. During the first summer vacation after I entered university, we decided to go home together since we had the opportunity. There wasn't any particular reason for me to decline, so I agreed. However, for some reason, Lily got off at the same station as me. I want to see the town where you were born and raised, even if just a little bit, she said, seeing my puzzled expression. Lily smiled and explained it with a cheerful tone. However, I felt slightly awkward being with Lily because my mother was supposed to be waiting at the station to pick me up. My mother was standing right in front of the ticket gate, looking slightly surprised yet happy. The reason became clear. Lily was standing beside me, and my mother clearly misunderstood, thinking Lily was my girlfriend. So I decided to clarify things right away. "This young lady is," I began. But before I could introduce Lily as my senior at university, she spoke up. "I am in a relationship with Jack. I'm Lily." I froze at Lily's sudden words. She looked at me with a mischievous smile, giggling. My mother responded with a confused, "Well, okay then." Then she asked, "So, how about coming to our house now?" In response, Lily said, "I'm truly tempted by your kindness, but my parents are also waiting for me at home. I'll have to take a rain check for another opportunity." With those words, she passed through the ticket gate again and headed toward the platform. On the way back home, my mother bombarded me with questions about Lily. That night, I sent a message to Lily. "What do you mean by all of that?" I texted Lily. A few minutes later, I received a reply. "I just expressed my feelings honestly. The rest is up to you." I responded with a simple, "Got it." Immediately, she replied, "What do you mean I got it?" "It's either we're together or we're not. There are only 2 options for an answer." I typed back, "I want to be in a relationship with you," and sent the message. Her response came quickly. "All right then." From that moment, I felt our relationship dynamic was established. During my job search, I didn't have any particular company in mind. Even the choice of where to send my applications was made after discussing it with Lily. Don't you have any initiative of your own? Lily would often caution me. Each time, I'd respond with something like, I have Mother Lily, the absolute deity, with me, so everything will be fine. At that time, I had little awareness of making decisions about my own life. I was always receiving advice from Lily, despite her saying, I'm truly discouraged with you. Lily always provided me with precise advice. I believe Lily probably knew more about me than I did myself. Years after graduating from university, I married Lily, and I thought our life together was going smoothly. So, when Lily suddenly confessed to cheating on me, I was deeply shocked. Tomorrow morning, I will be leaving this house. As I am solely at fault, I will agree to whatever compensation you suggest. Please contact the lawyer I will appoint for further arrangements, she said, delivering her words without any emotional expression. Then she entered the bedroom. I couldn't say a word or take any action in response. Frustrated with my own helplessness, I couldn't sleep at all that night. Early the next morning, I heard the sound of Lily waking up and getting ready. I wanted to wake up immediately and speak to her right away. However, I didn't know what to say or how to approach the situation, so I remained still in bed. After I heard the sound of Lily closing the door and everything became quiet, I finally got out of bed. At the dining table, breakfast was prepared for me. Next to it, there was a divorce document, the wedding ring, and the house key. And note with the words, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for everything up until now, was also left behind. I collapsed in despair and cried out loud, sobbing. Tears overflowed from my eyes in such abundance that I couldn't believe I had so many within me. Eventually, I realized I had fallen asleep on the dining room floor. With no motivation to do anything, I stared at the ceiling, feeling lost. As I remained in a daze for a while, the image that emerged in my mind was Lily's smiling face. What's the point now? I kept thinking, shaking my head, but Lily's smile wouldn't fade from my mind. It was then that I realized once again how much I truly loved Lily, and I thought to myself, I should be a man that Lily can be proud of. Some might think I'm being too sensitive or that there's no need to stand by a cheating partner. However, regardless of what others may think, I still firmly believed and trusted that Lily was my greatest ally and understanding partner. Afterward, I worked tirelessly and wholeheartedly. I took on tasks that I was not naturally inclined towards, such as sales as a contract employee, and gained experience in more manual labor-oriented jobs. Due to the unfamiliar physical labor, there were times when I couldn't move the next day due to exhaustion. One day, I received a call from my former boss at the previous company. I have an acquaintance who is recruiting staff for a children's care facility. If you're still looking for work, would you be interested in giving it a try? It seemed my former boss, who had been contacting me from time to time, had been keeping an eye on me since I hadn't found a job yet. At that time, I had changed from my previous passive self and had become more proactive in facing various challenges. Through various jobs, I had developed a stronger mindset of let's challenge anything and everything. Please count me in. I readily accepted my former boss's offer without hesitation. At the children's care facility, there were various types of children: cheerful ones, quiet ones, restless ones, quick-tempered ones, easily injured ones, and many more. Many of those children had experienced things I couldn't even imagine despite their young age. Reflecting on my life, I realized how naive and indulgent I had been. As I sincerely engaged with the children, who were honest with their feelings, I found my own heart healing in the process. I began to think that maybe this was the place where I truly wanted to work. With my doubts gone and a lighter heart, I interacted with the children in a more natural and genuine way. One day, while I was doing desk work, The facility director called me into his office. As soon as I entered, I froze in place. It was Lily's parents. Both had solemn expressions on their faces. "I'll leave you to talk amongst yourselves," the director said, leaving the room. A few days later, on my day off from work, I headed toward a beach park nearby. This park was full of memories, where Lily and I used to take walks after getting married. She was already at the bench overlooking the harbor where the yachts were moored. I recognized her from her back. "Long time no see." I greeted her. "It's been a while. How have you been?" she asked as she turned around. I sat down on the bench, leaving a little space between us. "You didn't, did you? Cheat on me?" I asked straightforwardly. There was no need to beat around the bush. Lily nodded silently. "I heard most of the story from your parents," I said. Lily's parents had told me why she had brought up the idea of divorce and how she had been living. Lily had felt it was her responsibility for not actively searching for a new job, even when I lost mine. She believed it would be the same cycle if she continued to search for a job with me as it had been before. Therefore, she thought divorce was the best way for both of us to make a fresh start on our own paths. However, she couldn't imagine that I would accept the idea of divorce if she just brought it up straightforwardly. Lily explained that she had faked an affair to manipulate me into accepting the divorce. She didn't show much emotion during the divorce discussion because she was afraid she would start crying if she became emotionally involved. After returning to her parents' home, Lily became so depressed that her parents grew concerned about her well-being. Lily's parents had thought about telling me the truth several times, but she had stopped them. Eventually, my parents told her parents about me working at the child welfare facility, and they visited to see me. When I heard about that, I thought, "Isn't that going a bit too far?" However, Lily replied, "I thought you needed this kind of tough love to start fresh and carve out a new path for yourself from scratch." I asked, "Didn't you think I would remarry?" Lily replied, "At that time, it was what it was. I was prepared to accept that it was our fate." "You're such a determined person," I murmured. "But after hearing the story from your parents, I also realized that you have your own vulnerabilities. From now on, I want you to show me those weaknesses as well." Lily responded, "That's all up to you from now on." We shared a knowing smile. At that moment, I thought to myself, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person. I want to cherish the happiness I found, even if it took a detour, and treasure it for the rest of my life. "What do you mean I'm fired?" I couldn't believe it. For 20 years, I worked at the company run by my in-laws. Then one day, my husband casually told me I was fired after my father-in-law passed away. "Why?" I asked, confused. "It's because Catherine is taking over the company," he said. "Wait, even if Catherine takes over, don't we still need someone to handle the accounting?" I questioned. "Catherine's boyfriend is going to handle that. You're no longer needed," he replied. I was in shock. Catherine smugly said to me, "You should know your place, especially when you're so arrogant despite being an outsider. Enjoy your jobless life from now on." Lol. When Catherine came back, I felt not only left out as a family member, but also unappreciated for my 20 years of hard work at the company. All my efforts seemed wasted. My father-in-law never openly praised me, but if he thought my ideas were good for the company, he would use them. But with Catherine, who seems to see me as an enemy in charge, things probably won't be the same. I no longer have any attachment to such a company. All right then, I hope you all work hard for the company's survival. I told Robert and the others and decided to part ways with the company. My name is Emily. I've always been good at managing money. I studied accounting in college and was hired as an accountant at a major company. It was when I got used to the job that I met Robert, who was younger than me. We met at a bar where he shared that he was helping out with his parents' recycling business. Talking to Robert, who was different from my career-driven colleagues and a bit indecisive, felt refreshing. Robert seemed to like me, and we exchanged contact information, starting to go out for drinks together. As we spent more time together, Robert began sharing about his family, especially his assertive sister, Catherine, who wouldn't settle for anything less than being the best. Catherine went to college, studied business, and worked at a regular company after that. But she didn't help out with the family recycling business. She thinks the recycling business is too plain and can't boast about it to her friends. Oh, Catherine has always done whatever she wanted. Although he sounded exasperated, Robert seemed to care deeply about Catherine. As we shared stories about our families, we grew closer. After dating for a while, Robert proposed to me. I couldn't imagine being apart from him and immediately said yes. I have a favor to ask, Emily. Once we're married, I want you to quit your current job and help with the family business, the recycling business. My mother has been handling accounting, but she hasn't really studied for it. You're an expert in that area, right? I want you to handle our finances. I had grown a bit tired of working for a large company, so the idea of working for a family-run business seemed appealing. I left my job at the major company. As soon as we got married, I started working as an accountant for Robert's father's company. Upon reviewing the books, I realized that my mother-in-law, who had no formal training in accounting, had made numerous mistakes. I began by cleaning up the records and overhauling the company's finances. Eventually, I understood the workings of the recycling business and identified areas where we could cut costs and boost sales. Robert, I have something I want to discuss with you, I said, deciding to consult him about the cost-cutting and business plans I had been developing. Robert quickly skimmed through the materials I had prepared and said, "These are great ideas, Emily. With this business plan, our sales should increase. I'll let Dad and Mom know about it too." My proposal was adopted, and to push forward the cost cuts and the new business plan, I began working tirelessly, even sacrificing sleep. Thanks to these efforts, the company's performance steadily improved, and we were able to hire new employees. As the company thrived, the locals started taking notice. I actively engaged with the community, and our business grew as a community-based store. Time flew by, and before I realized it, 20 years had passed since I joined the company. While the employees and locals grew fond of me, Robert and my in-laws seemed to take my dedication for granted. "Emily, dear, aren't you working too hard? Are you getting enough days off?" A local lady who lived nearby asked. But Robert just laughed. No, she's passionate about her work, so she's fine. Even if she gets a day off, she doesn't have any significant hobbies anyway. Haha. I've known about this company since Robert's parents started it, but its growth is thanks to Emily, right? You should at least give her a big bonus. The local lady suggested. She's my wife, so she doesn't need a bonus. Living off the company's money is more than enough, Robert replied dismissively. Despite the concerns of those around me, I continued to work hard for the company. I found fulfillment in my job and being involved with the community. I wasn't bothered by the lack of days off or bonuses. What concerned me was Robert's frequent nights out. "Robert, you seem to be going out a lot lately at night. Where are you going?" I asked. "I'm working, expanding my network," he replied. "If it's for business, can't you do it during the day? Stop nagging. I have my way of doing things. You're just a mere accountant, so stay quiet." "I see, but if there's any issue at work, please let me know," I said. "Yeah, got it," Robert responded, seeming annoyed and distancing himself more from home. One day, I received a phone call at home from a warehouse of one of our business partners. "Emily, something terrible happened." Bob, who came to pick up the goods, suddenly collapsed. "What?" I explained. My father-in-law, Bob, was rushed to the hospital, but due to the severity of his injury when he fell, he passed away. Mourning his sudden death, many from our business partners and the community attended the funeral. After a long time, I saw Catherine, who had moved out after getting a job. Catherine was taken aback by the grand funeral. This company seemed like it could go under any time. When did it grow so big? She asked. It's all thanks to Emily, one of the employees said. She turned the company around, increased the profit margin, and expanded the business. When profits increased, she suggested redistributing them to us, which boosted our morale. Seeing Emily work hard inspires us to do the same. What's so great about slightly improving the performance of such a small company? Catherine seemed upset that the employees were praising me and not paying attention to her. Whenever Catherine saw me, she treated me like a servant. Emily, I'm a bit thirsty. Could you get me a cold drink? I can make tea if you'd like, I offered. I said I want something cold. You might not understand since you've worked in a small company, but in big companies, the boss's word is absolute. I don't think you're my boss, though. Don't nitpick. In our family hierarchy, I am above you. After the funeral, Catherine called Robert and my mother-in-law into a room. Robert, Mom, I'd like to discuss our future as a family. Please come, she said. Glancing at me coldly, she added, this is a family discussion, so Emily, you're not welcome. Leaving me stunned, Catherine led Robert and her mother into another room. An hour later, Robert came out and casually told me, I've decided to hand over the company to my sister. Wait, what? I was shocked. It seemed the topic of the family discussion was about who would take over the company after their father's passing. Robert, who wasn't assertive enough to lead, was reluctant to become the CEO, and their mother didn't want to be at the forefront. Seeing their reluctance, Catherine declared that she would be happy to become the CEO, and they gratefully accepted her proposal. But Catherine has never been involved in this company. Is that okay? I asked. Stop with the annoying comments and stay out of family matters, Robert replied. I am family too, and have been dedicated to this company. I argued. You're no longer an employee. What do you mean I'm fired? Even if Catherine takes over, someone will still need to handle accounting, right? Catherine's boyfriend is apparently going to handle it, so we don't need you anymore. This is unbelievable. Catherine smugly added, you should know your place, mispraised by others. Enjoy your unemployed life. When Catherine returned, I was not only treated as an outsider in the family, but also disregarded for my years of dedication to the company, treated as if it was nothing, and my job was taken away. The struggles and efforts felt worthless. Although my father-in-law never openly praised me, he always considered my suggestions beneficial for the company. With Catherine, who sees me as an enemy, at the top, that won't happen anymore. Have no more attachment to such a company. Okay then, good luck with the business, I said. Decided to part ways with the company and started a new life at home after seeing Robert off. However, a few months later, Catherine and Robert came to my house. Catherine, what's going on? I asked. What do you mean, what's going on? Our company's performance has been deteriorating ever since you left. You didn't hand over properly, did you? She accused. What? I did the minimum handover. Why do you think the performance dropped? Have you been reviewing the monthly expenses? You have to properly calculate the difference between revenue and expenses, or else you'll be in the red. I've always been doing that. I studied management, unlike you. Isn't the fundamental problem with the way the business is being run? Even if everything else is in place, if you're going to say that, then tell us what you've done, Catherine challenged. As I remained silent, Robert spoke up, trying to be patient. Emily, you must be getting bored just staying at home. If you help out the company, I can give you some allowance. So come back. Despite ruthlessly driving me away before, his sudden shift in attitude, wanting to call me back as the business becomes precarious, left me dumbfounded. I decline. I don't wish to return to that company anymore, I said firmly. Hearing my words, Catherine flared up. What? Despite being a full-time housewife, how dare you refuse like that? Do you not care about our family's company? You're the one who doesn't care about the company. I'm the CEO now. How am I not caring about the company? She retorted. Weren't you the one who originally said the company was plain and boring? You only took on the role because the title female CEO sounded cool and you could brag about it. Don't act like you care now. I said, standing my ground. Your boyfriend Zach told me during the handover. I said, so what? No matter the reason. I saved the company when there was no successor. Catherine replied, saved the company. I believe the current downturn is due to you, Catherine. What do you mean? While I'm at home during the day, I often hear gossip from the regular customers in the neighborhood. They've seen you with Zach out shopping and even traveling during work hours. That was for business trips, Catherine claimed. In the 20 years I worked there, I never once saw an accountant go on a business trip. Can you tell me specifically which clients you were meeting with? Why should I tell you? You don't work for us, she snapped. Your boyfriend Zach is quite talkative. During the handover, he boasted about how he could travel and shop using the company's money now that his girlfriend is the CEO. Catherine's face contorted in anger. Zach, he's such a blabbermouth. Employees won't follow a CEO who appoints her boyfriend as the accountant and misuses the company's funds. Isn't the problem with the actions of you and your boyfriend? My words made Robert glare at Catherine. Catherine, is this true? If it is, it's embezzlement. It's not like that. She's just making things up. Then let's see the books. Zach seemed to lack knowledge in accounting, so he probably wouldn't know how to cover things up. I'm sure there's evidence of misuse. At this, Catherine turned pale. Seeing her reaction, Robert started accusing her. Making you the CEO was a mistake. I'll report this to Mother and have you dismissed. No. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me, Catherine pleaded, leaving in disgrace. The only one left, Robert, turned to me desperately. Emily, we need your help to save the company. Please come back. Like I said before, have no intention of going back, I replied. But we're married. No, our relationship as a married couple is over. I thrust the divorce papers at Robert. What are you saying? If you divorce without returning to work, you'll be the one in trouble. How do you plan to live? He asked. Don't worry about me, I replied, showing Robert the employment notification from the major company I used to work at. After I was fired, I was on a job hunt. I found out that a former colleague had moved to HR. She remembered my performance and recommended me for reemployment. But that doesn't mean we need to divorce. No, there's a reason for the divorce. What? I had been worried about you coming home late since just before your father passed away. So I had a detective agency investigate you these past months and found plenty of evidence of your affairs. I thrust out a photo of Robert meeting with an unknown woman. What is this? He stammered. An affair is a valid reason for divorce, so I will be demanding alimony from you. With undeniable evidence in front of him, Robert had no choice but to agree to my terms and sign the divorce papers and the alimony agreement. With the two documents in hand, I packed up and left our home. Later on, Robert and his mother dismissed Catherine from her position, making Robert the president of the company. They also fired Zach, and his mother took over the accounting as she used to. After being dismissed, Catherine tried to find another job, but her high expectations made it difficult. Apparently, She's now working part-time and is the butt of jokes among her friends. Zach, who was only with Catherine for her money, moved on to another woman once she started working part-time, and Catherine was quickly dumped. With Robert, who lacked leadership skills, and his mother, who had no knowledge of accounting, in charge, the company's performance only declined. Employees started to leave, and the company eventually went bankrupt. Robert and his mother were drowned in debt. I heard Robert's mistress disappeared when she found out Robert was out of money. Robert, who had never worked for a company, could only find part-time jobs and struggled to pay off his debts. He even had to take care of his aging mother, who couldn't work even part-time, leading a difficult life. On the other hand, I regained my old skills and am working competently at the major company. My former colleagues appreciate my return, and I am rightfully rewarded for my hard work, being recognized and valued for my efforts. I've come to realize once again that the best place for me is where I'm needed. I vow to continue to work hard to meet the expectations of those around me. My name is Maria Dalton. I'm going to be 27 this year. I've been married for 5 years and have a son named Martin who just turned 4. At first, I worked full-time after getting married, but now I work part-time at the same company. My husband is 30 years old, 3 years older than me. I fell in love with Kevin Carlton's romantic gestures, which led us to date and eventually get married. But after we got married, Kevin, who used to be kind, started acting more controlling. Kevin has a younger sister named Jane Dalton, who is 20 years old. Kevin spoils her a lot, maybe because they have a big age gap. Before we got married, I didn't really have a problem with this and thought that Kevin and Jane got along well. After we got married, I started noticing some changes in Jane's behavior. She often comes over to our house, and every time she does, I feel like I have to do everything for her because Kevin always gives in to her selfish requests. Jane shows up at our place without warning, whether it's morning or night. And when she does, she never brings any gifts or shows any appreciation. She acts like I don't even exist, only talking to Kevin, saying stuff like, "Hey, brother, I'm here again." Then Kevin, seeing that there's only enough dinner for 3 people, asks Jane if she wants to eat. Naturally, I didn't plan to cook for her. When I try to tell Kevin quietly that I didn't make dinner for Jane, he just brushes it off and tells me to deal with it because his sister is here. So, in the end, I end up giving my portion of dinner to Jane. And then, loud enough for Jane to hear, Kevin blames me, saying things like, "You should have made more food." When Jane hears this, she looks like she's about to cry and apologizes to me. Kevin comforts her and scolds me, saying things like, "You're not being considerate," or "Don't be mean to my sister," even though Jane says sorry every time. I notice that Jane seems happier when Kevin pays more attention to her than he does to me. It's like she enjoys it. I fixed myself a meal from leftovers in the fridge, thinking I'll eat with Kevin and Jane and our son Martin. But just as I'm about to start, Jane tells Kevin she wants to talk to him alone. "Martin, you eat with your mom?" Kevin says, moving us to another room. This isn't the first time he's done this. After Martin and I finish eating and go to clean up, I find Kevin and Jane chatting happily on the sofa. Their dishes are still on the table, untouched. They never bothered to clean up. I feel like they see me more as a maid than a wife or sister-in-law. They don't talk to Martin either, as if he's just a maid's child brought to work. I start cleaning up in the kitchen and am about to give Martin a bath when Kevin calls me loudly. It's nearly 8 p.m., but he says, "Jane wants cake. Go buy it now. Get it from the shop near the station," he adds, specifying where. Going to the cake shop will delay Martin's bedtime, but when I hesitate, Jane says to Kevin, "I want it now," and Kevin rushes me, saying, "It's okay if he sleeps late today." What's with that attitude when Jane is here? Kevin starts loudly blaming me. I know I'll have to go to the cake shop, so I reluctantly decide to go. The shop near the station closes at 9 p.m., so if I hurry, I can make it. As I'm getting ready, I overhear Kevin and Jane talking loudly. They say things like, "She's so inconsiderate," and "Why did you marry her?" I can't leave Martin behind, so I take him with me. As I'm getting him ready, I hear Kevin's loud voice from the living room saying, "If you defy me again, we'll get a divorce." Martin can hear it too. He might not understand the words, but I think he knows his parents are fighting. Holding back my emotions, I ask Martin, "What kind of cake would you like?" He brightens up, saying, "Mom, I want a cake with lots of fruits." So Martin and I chatted happily about cakes on our way to the cake shop, forgetting about Kevin's earlier words. We made it just before closing time, and luckily, they had the cake Jane wanted. We bought 2 cakes, plus the fruit-loaded one Martin wanted. Back home, I served the cakes to Jane and Kevin, then prepared Martin's cake and took it to the dining room. But as soon as I set it down in front of Martin, Jane pointed to it and said she wanted that one instead. Before I could say anything, Kevin moved Martin's cake in front of Jane, ignoring Martin's protests, and let her eat it. He said, "I bought that cake with my money, so I get to choose," which made me really upset. I couldn't hold it in anymore and voiced my frustration to Kevin and Jane. Kevin then threatened with divorce. Martin stopped crying but held my hand tightly, looking worried. Then, after some thought, he said, "Mom, I also love cake with strawberries on it. It's really delicious," referring to the cake Jane initially wanted. I felt like I was making Martin endure too much. There were 3 adults, including me, making a 4-year-old put up with this. Seeing Jane reach for Martin's cake after he said how yummy it was made me take him to the next room so he could eat it in peace. Kevin apologized to Jane, saying sorry for being stingy, and I wanted to argue, but I held back, not wanting Martin to hear about divorce. Watching Martin happily eat his cake was a relief. After finishing, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Martin's bed. The next morning, Jane had already left. As I was about to wake up Kevin and Martin and prepare breakfast, I heard Martin crying and rushed to him. Shockingly, Martin's piggy bank, given by my father, was broken, and all his saved-up money was gone. He'd always said goodnight to it before sleeping, just like he did last night. At that time, the only people in the living room were Kevin and Jane. Asked Kevin about the piggy bank, and he said indifferently that Jane needed some money, so she took it from there. As I held Martin, crying and shaking, I felt his pain so deeply that I cried with him. It hurt to see Kevin care more about his sister than our son. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. "Why are you making the mornings so tense?" "I feel terrible," Kevin exclaimed. "Don't you think you did something wrong? Martin is crying so much for the first time since our marriage." I expressed my anger towards him. I had always been careful not to argue in front of Martin, but I couldn't stay silent seeing him upset like this. Feeling hurt and shocked by Kevin's sudden actions, I watched as he handed me divorce papers and left the house with a loud bang. Martin, who had never cried over the issues with Kevin and Jane before, must have reached his limit. He had been crying since last night. Unable to bear seeing Martin so upset, I suggested we skip daycare for the day. Martin seemed happy to be with me and eagerly agreed. We spent the day playing together. Martin brought a picture book from the shelf, sat on my lap, and happily remarked that I was the teacher at nursery today, looking like an angel. His little heart must be full of patience. I decided to take the day off work to be with him, despite causing trouble at my workplace. When I explained the situation, they kindly granted me a day off, urging me to play a lot with Martin. In the morning, we went to the park, played games, and had fun on the playground equipment. When we got home and had lunch, Martin seemed tired and fell asleep on my lap, just like when he was a baby. Instead of doing household chores, I decided to cherish this moment and be healed by his peaceful sleeping face and breathing. As I dozed off, I was startled by a noise from the entrance. It wasn't time for Kevin to come home yet, so I became suspicious. Quickly grabbed Martin and hid in the bedroom closet, taking only my bag with valuables. I heard someone enter the house and search for something. It turned out to be Jane's voice. She seemed to be searching for something and made a phone call to Kevin, mentioning searching for something. I wondered if it could be one of my belongings they were looking for. Feeling unsettled by Kevin's behavior and Jane's unexpected intrusion into our home, I quickly packed essentials for Martin and myself. When Martin woke up, suggested we visit Grandpa's place. We headed to the station and took a train to my parents' house, which is conveniently just 2 stations away. Arriving unannounced, my parents welcomed us warmly, sensing something was wrong just by looking at my face. Martin immediately started playing with their pet dog, which helped me relax a bit. I recounted everything that happened with Kevin and Jane, explaining that I felt scared to stay at our house. My mother speculated that Jane might have been looking for my belongings, possibly my cash cards. It reminded me of my situation. I'm still the CEO of a successful online shop for handmade goods, but Kevin doesn't know. He thinks I've stepped down and only receive help from the company. I've kept this from Kevin because he's bad with money and only gives me a small amount for food expenses each month. He once suggested I quit my job and become a full-time housewife, but I refused. Eventually, he agreed to let me work part-time, but made me sign a post-marital property waiver to prevent me from considering divorce. Since Martin was born, I've struggled financially, using my savings for his nursery fees and clothes. I've never asked Kevin for more money beyond our agreed food budget. It seems like Jane and Kevin might be desperate for money, especially if they're searching for my cash cards. I have a separate savings account for Martin where a portion of my salary goes each month. But it's clear they won't find anything because I always carry my valuables with me. To be safe, my father suggested keeping my valuables at their house in their safe. It's concerning that Jane might have access to our house even when we're not there, and Kevin might be allowing it. Martin came to my father crying, explaining that his piggy bank was broken and he couldn't keep his promise to save up. My father became angry and decided to call Kevin. But my mother advised against it, saying we should calmly find out their purpose first to prevent them from making excuses later. We decided to record their conversation to find out their intentions. My parents consulted a lawyer friend, and we returned home. While I was cooking dinner, Kevin came home and immediately asked me about my cash cards. When I questioned him, he gave vague answers. Then he demanded all my part-time money for his sister. When I refused, he became angry and pushed divorce papers toward me, saying hurtful things about Martin and valuing Jane over him. I silently packed, took Martin, and left. Kevin insisted on divorce, but I couldn't go back to a house where my sister-in-law was treated like family while Martin and I were pushed aside. Kevin bombarded me with messages and calls, but I ignored them and went to my parents' house. I played them the recording and showed them the divorce papers. They advised me to do what's best for Martin, even if it means divorcing Kevin. But I fear that might hurt Martin too. While struggling with this decision, Martin said he was hungry, and my mother made him his favorite dish, hamburgers. Seeing her kindness toward Martin brought tears to my eyes. She said she prepared the hamburgers so that Martin and I could visit them anytime. After taking a bite of the hamburger, Martin exclaimed with a big smile, "Grandma's hamburger is so good. I want to eat it every day." He said this to my mother with joy in his eyes. I replied, "That's because this hamburger contains my love for you, Martin," as he took another big bite and offered some to me. Touched by his kindness, Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. My father reassured Martin, "Mommy is crying because she's so happy that you gave her this hamburger. These are happy tears, not sad ones." Martin smiled, understanding. He then said something that made my heart ache. "This hamburger is so delicious. If Jane were here, she would have eaten it." Hearing this, I couldn't hold back my tears and hugged him tightly. Seeing this, my father's eyes turned red. I told Martin, "It's a blessing to be with family, isn't it?" He looked surprised and asked, "Isn't Dad saying that only Jane is family? Is my family just Mom, Grandpa, and Grandma?" My father gently replied, "Yes, that's right." He then asked Martin if he wanted to live with us as a family, to which Martin replied with a laugh, "Of course. We're family." This brought smiles to everyone's faces. Despite considering divorce, this meal filled me with such happiness that I decided to part ways with Kevin and tell Martin about it. Although it was a heavy topic, Martin seemed to understand and happily agreed to live as a family. That night, Martin slept with my father and the dog, bringing comfort with their faint laughter. I lay in bed with my mother, reminiscing about my childhood, feeling at peace. The next day, I turned on my phone to find over 200 calls and messages from Kevin, showing his emotional instability. It exhausted me, so I turned off my phone again. Today, I discussed with a lawyer and formalized my intention to divorce. The lawyer will meet with Kevin tomorrow. Later, the lawyer explained that Jane had accumulated a significant debt from the casino and shopping addiction, and Kevin had acted as her guarantor. When Jane couldn't pay her debts, they decided to use my savings to help. Now, Kevin wants me and Martin back and doesn't want to divorce me. The lawyer said the divorce papers I gave had already been submitted, and when asked if this meant the divorce was accepted, the lawyer confirmed yes, it was. Kevin seemed sad, saying he doesn't want another man to have me. But knowing everything was finalized gave me peace of mind. I expected arguments about child support, but he agreed to pay $340 every month for Martin. Later, Kevin called me. His tone was calm, unlike before. He admitted he thought keeping me financially dependent would stop me from divorcing him. He also confessed to spoiling his sister Jane, thinking it was showing sibling love. He wasn't ignoring Martin, but he felt jealous of him for having my attention. He asked me not to remarry until he settled Jane's debts, but I told him firmly that I didn't love him anymore and wouldn't reconsider. I could hear him crying softly before he said, "Please be happy," and hung up. I talked with my parents about our future and decided to stay with them till Martin grows up. He also transferred to a different nursery. I resumed my role as the company president after explaining everything to my coworkers. Later, I heard that Kevin and Jane told their parents about the divorce and their debts, which led to them being disowned. Their parents were more upset about not seeing their grandson again than the debt. Now, Kevin and Jane live in a small, old apartment, always blaming each other. They brought this upon themselves. Today, I'm happy being with my family.
Your father and mother are in critical condition. You need to cut your trip short and come home immediately. I pleaded desperately to Tyler. But Tyler's response was heartless. "I'm on a trip with my colleagues. Handle it on your own. You're probably exaggerating anyway. I'm busy, so I'm going to hang up now. Later." Hold on a second. I tried to reach out to Tyler, but he hung up on me. 2 weeks later, Tyler came home without any remorse. I spoke up. "Both their funerals are over." Tyler froze with a puzzled look on his face. "What do you mean by both their funerals? Are you trying to play some sick joke on me?" he asked frantically. "It's not a joke. Didn't I call you 2 weeks ago to tell you that your father and mother were critically ill?" I answered. "But why so suddenly?" Tyler was at a loss for words. "My name is Jessica Atkins. I'm 56 years old and a full-time homemaker. I used to work in the administrative department of a major company. I left my job when I got married. I met my husband Tyler during college. When I became a college student, I joined the tennis club because a friend invited me. I had never played tennis before. I just wanted to have fun and make friends. But the reality was different. At that time, Tyler was the head of the tennis club. He was a strict guy aiming for national tournaments. For Tyler, it didn't matter whether you had experience or not. It was all about skill. Every day, Tyler would relentlessly serve the ball during practice. If you couldn't return it, he'd berate you. Being a novice, I couldn't even make contact with the ball using my racket. Tyler would scold me for it, saying, "Jessica, are you kidding me? You're just in the way. Go pick up the balls or something," effectively kicking me off the tennis court. I felt so humiliated by Tyler's insults. I was always relegated to just picking up balls, barely ever holding a racket. Out of sheer frustration, I practiced my tennis swings and form even at home. Perhaps my hard work eventually paid off. One day, as usual, Tyler served the ball. But this time, I managed to powerfully return it. Tyler, seemingly expecting me to miss, stared in shock. But in the next moment, he exclaimed, "Jessica, that was incredible," with the biggest smile on his face. It was in that instant that I unexpectedly fell head over heels for him. After that, Tyler continued to be strict, and I kept trying to keep up with his intense training regimen. One day, after some time had passed, we were out drinking with friends in our group. We had a get-together once a month to deepen our friendships outside of our group activities. On the way home from one of those gatherings, I happened to be alone with Tyler. Out of the blue, he confessed his feelings to me. "I've fallen for you, Jessica. I want us to be together." I was taken aback. Tyler had never shown any signs of affection towards me, but I had feelings for him too. So I replied, "I like you too. Let's give it a shot." That marked the beginning of our relationship. Tyler wanted to keep our relationship a secret from the club members so as not to affect team morale. Still, I was so in love with Tyler back then. I was just happy to be with him. We continued dating even after we both graduated from college, and we got married when I was 26. At Tyler's request, I left my job upon our marriage. I'll always be by Tyler's side from now on, I thought. Back then, I was head over heels, daydreaming about a dazzling future with Tyler. 30 years have passed since Tyler and I got married. In the early days, we went on frequent dates and were very close. But after 30 years, things had become somewhat routine. I stopped caring as much about my appearance as I used to. Back in my 20s, I wore trendy clothes and was pretty fashionable every time I went on a date with Tyler. I remember putting on a full face of makeup. But look at me now. So long as I'm dressed, I don't care much about coordinating outfits. I've grown to love loose skirts with stretchy elastic waists more than those with zippers. Now that I'm a stay-at-home wife, I rarely see other people, so I go barefaced from morning till night. I can't even recall the last time I wore makeup. Some might think I've let myself go. Compared to my 20s, my body has changed quite a bit. I was fairly slim back then, but not anymore. I've put on weight and now resemble the before pictures you see on weight loss shows. Maybe this change in appearance is one of the reasons our relationship has become routine. Gradually, I feel like Tyler's view of me has shifted from wife to mom, even though I'm not his mother. He occasionally jokes, "Mom, can I have another coffee?" By the way, my mother-in-law is still around and lives in an apartment about a 10-minute walk from our house with my father-in-law, so we live close by but separately. My in-laws are wonderful people and always show concern for me. Because they are so caring, I wanted to be there for them. So I visited them often, but lately my in-laws' health has been declining. My father-in-law has been battling a serious illness, and the doctors say there's not much more they can do. Tearfully, my father-in-law told my mother-in-law and me, "I want to spend my last days at home." So he was discharged from the hospital and is now receiving palliative care at home. Looking after my father-in-law on her own, my mother-in-law seems exhausted and her expression has darkened. Being the stay-at-home wife, I help with my father-in-law's care almost every day, but living with him must be tough for my mother-in-law. "It's hard, Jessica. Just for one night, could you stay with us?" she asked with a vulnerable expression. "I'm sorry, Tyler comes home at night," I said. It hurt, but I had to turn my mother-in-law down. "I see," my mother-in-law murmured with a look of despair. "Every night I have to take care of Tyler. Tyler is quite the dominant husband and doesn't lift a finger to help around the house. He just throws his dirty socks anywhere. Of course, dinner has to be ready and warm by the time Tyler gets home. Leftovers are absolutely out of the question. If he finds out, there's no telling how much he'll lash out. Once, I couldn't get home in time for Tyler's return because I was taking care of my father-in-law. The moment I got home, Tyler, with a face as red as a beet, yelled at me, "You should prioritize me over my dad. I'm your family, remember?" I wanted to point out that my father-in-law is also his family, but I kept quiet because if I had argued, Tyler would have just shouted even louder. Because of things like this, I always have to prioritize Tyler. Every day feels so constricted. Being the stay-at-home wife, I feel guilty and can't stand up to Tyler. I couldn't help my downcast mother-in-law and could only look at her with concern. Lately, Tyler's been coming home late a lot and never lets me know. Sometimes, he even comes home on the last train. Today too, Tyler got home past midnight. "I'm back," Tyler greeted me cheerfully. His face was red and he seemed a bit tipsy. "Did you go out drinking again? You've been coming home late a lot lately," I said, holding the bag Tyler handed me. "It's my money, and I'll spend it however I want. You're just a stay-at-home wife, so you should just obey me," Tyler retorted gruffly. "But don't you think it's too frequent? Who are you going out with every time? Their families might be worried too," I hesitantly asked Tyler. Maybe Tyler's been forcing people to go drinking with him. Tyler's been with the company for a long time and holds a position of authority. It's hard for most to say no to someone like that. Tyler then replied with a smug smile, "It's all good. I just always drink with the same coworker. Plus, they lives alone and is single. He's always happy when I buy him a drink," Tyler said smugly. I couldn't say anything back, being a stay-at-home wife without much say in matters. Then I had an idea and decided to talk to Tyler about it. "Could you let me know in advance when you're going to go out for drinks? Your mom seems really stressed out, and your dad's condition isn't great either. I'd like to be there for them as much as possible." But Tyler laughed off my concerns. "No can do. When I go out depends on my mood. Besides, Mom will handle Dad's situation. Jessica, you should be all in for me." As I was taken aback by Tyler's harsh words, he said, instead of standing there, "Get the bath ready. You're so slow with that." He quickly headed to the bathroom. "Yes, I'm sorry. All I could do was respond like that." Then one day, Tyler suddenly told me, "I'm going to go on a trip for 2 weeks from next week." While I stood there in shock, Tyler cheerfully flipped through a guidebook, pondering what he'd eat. He was planning to go to Australia. Regaining my composure, I asked Tyler, "Why the sudden international trip? What about your job? And I don't even have a passport." Tyler seemed a bit annoyed with my questions. "I got a bonus, so I thought I'd just go for it. I've already requested PTO from work, and I'm not going with you, Jessica, so you don't need a passport, right?" Tyler answered nonchalantly. "I hadn't even had a proper honeymoon since we got married." "Who are you going with?" I asked. Even for day trips, Tyler would say it's a waste of money and never took me along. Now, this sudden international trip seemed suspicious. I stared intently at Tyler. "I'm going with a guy from work." "Now get dinner ready already," Tyler retorted. I realized it would be challenging to press him further. Tyler probably wouldn't answer me if I continued to ask and might even snap at me. Though I felt frustrated, I reluctantly started preparing dinner. That day, Tyler left for his trip early in the morning. By noon, I found myself frantically calling Tyler. "What do you want?" "I'm about to board a plane for an international trip." "Read the room," Tyler snapped as soon as he answered. "My in-laws are in critical condition. Please cancel your trip and come home immediately." I pleaded with Tyler desperately. If he hadn't boarded the plane yet, there was still time, or so I thought. But Tyler's response was cold. "I'm on vacation with my colleague. Handle it yourself. You're probably exaggerating anyway. I'm busy. Going to hang up now. Bye." Wait a second. I tried to reach out, but he hung up. No matter how many times I called back, he didn't answer. "You'll regret this," I whispered to myself. 2 weeks later, Tyler walked in cheerfully carrying a large suitcase. "I'm back," he said. I approached the unapologetic Tyler and said, "Both their funerals are over." "What?" Tyler looked puzzled as if he didn't understand. "What do you mean by both their funerals? Are you playing some kind of sick joke?" Tyler, clearly panicking, questioned me. I sighed deeply at Tyler's flustered demeanor. "It's no joke. Don't you remember I called you 2 weeks ago telling you your parents were critically ill?" I replied. "But why all of a sudden?" Tyler trailed off, unable to find the words. I found myself sitting on the floor. "When I went to visit your parents, they both had collapsed with pale faces. I called an ambulance in a panic, but the doctor said they were both in critical condition. Your dad needed care for a while now, and your mom had been looking unwell recently. Just a series of unfortunate events, I guess, I explained to Tyler with a detached tone. I'm truly heartbroken that my in-laws ended up like this. I was visiting them almost every day and still couldn't save them in time. To this day, I regret not going to their place sooner. But right now, I'm just so angry at you, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. They were your real parents, yet you chose yourself over them until the very end. No matter how much I pleaded, you always prioritized yourself. Remembering the tired look on your mother's face just makes me even angrier. Tyler, with a grim face, remained silent. He probably can't come to terms with reality. I decided to press Tyler further. It's your fault, isn't it? Choosing a trip with your colleague over your own parents. Did you enjoy your vacation? I asked with a sly smile, but Tyler just stayed silent, so I decided to prod a bit more. Well, I guess a trip with your lover is fun, right? 2 weeks seems a bit long though, I said. Tyler, as if resigning himself, began to talk. You knew. Yeah. I've been seeing Baker from work. She's over a decade younger than you, and she comforts me. It seemed Tyler was indeed cheating. His recent late nights were probably because of his affair with this Baker. As I stayed silent, Tyler, thinking I had accepted his confession, began to talk more. Baker is nothing like you. She has a slim figure, is beautiful, and she has a job. You're nothing compared to her, Tyler said, clearly proud of himself. Not caring at all, I responded nonchalantly. He seemed to forget he had asked me to become a stay-at-home wife after we got married. Then, as if he had an idea, Tyler made a suggestion. That's right. Now that my parents are gone and there's no one to oppose a divorce with you, and I can live here with Baker. So leave right now. I was flabbergasted by Tyler's words. Up to now, I've been a stay-at-home wife, always deferring to whatever Tyler said. I had no regular income of my own, and part of me lacked the confidence to move out and support myself. But after seeing Tyler prioritize a trip with his mistress over his critically ill parents, I didn't want to be with him anymore. Fine, I'll leave right now. Goodbye. And with that, I packed a minimum amount of stuff and left the house. A week later, I started staying at a budget motel. My husband Tyler called my cell. Hell, as soon as I picked up, Tyler jumped in. I can't find the checkbook at home. He sounded pretty panicked. However, I left all the statements under Tyler's name at the house. Of course, that includes the bank book where Tyler's salary gets deposited. The only checkbook I took is in my name. Did you check properly? As soon as I said that, Tyler shouted, It's the checkbook in your name. That account had a pretty good amount of money, right? It's a joint property, so half of it's mine, isn't it? After recklessly spending on trips and whatnot, I couldn't believe Tyler was now bringing up joint property. Holding back a heavy sigh, I calmly responded, The money in that checkbook is from gifts I received from my family and savings from when I was single, so it doesn't count as joint property, you know? Tyler, sounding frantic, replied, That's a problem. I nearly spent all of my last month's salary and bonus on the overseas trip. I thought I could cover the shortfall in our living expenses by withdrawing from your account. Up until now, I kept my checkbook in a drawer where Tyler could easily see it. I had no intention of hiding it from Tyler, so he must have sneaked a peek at the balance. I've moved out, Tyler, so I have no idea about your living expenses. Maybe ask for an advance on your paycheck. I firmly declined Tyler's request. Then I added, just to give Tyler a heads up. By the way, you might want to assume that there's hardly any inheritance from your parents. They were living on their pensions, and with the costs of your father's care, they were barely getting by. And you better clear out their rented apartment soon, or you'll be paying rent every month. My in-laws had been living in a rented apartment, barely making ends meet with the rent and the costs of caring for my father-in-law. My mother-in-law. Somehow, my mother-in-law managed to save and get by each month. I reckon she had her share of worries and stress. You're kidding. Tyler sounded shocked over the phone, so I decided to give Tyler the final blow. I have no responsibilities to help you out. You are on your own, I declared cheerfully. Why? Tyler's voice was full of disbelief. Tyler is already struggling with money, and he's probably panicking. Moreover, he's lost my in-laws and has no one else to turn to. I've already lost my real parents. How can you be so heartless? Are you some kind of monster? Tyler cried out, venting his frustrations at me. Despite having kicked me out with no income, he seemed to have forgotten that. I have no sympathy for Tyler, who's lost so much. It's all Tyler's fault. So I laughed and replied, "Well, you cheated. Don't expect me to help you out after what you have done." Hearing the word cheated, Tyler flinched. "I don't want to ask the company for help. If the company finds out about Baker and me, it'll be a disaster." Tyler's voice was shaky, but it was not my concern. "I don't even know the face of Baker. It's you and Baker who did wrong in the first place, right?" I challenged Tyler. "I hope they both lose their social credibility. I've got nothing left to lose. Whatever happens to them, it's none of my business. It's all my fault. Just help me out this time, please," Tyler pleaded with a voice full of desperation. "No way. You're going to regret this big time." I told him that and ended the call with Tyler. Tyler and I eventually got divorced. At first, Tyler was reluctant to agree to the divorce, mainly because of the financial issue, but in the end, he was persuaded by the lawyer I hired and signed the divorce papers. Tyler always acted arrogant in front of me and my in-laws, but was very submissive in front of others. He's the kind who's all bark and no bite. That's probably why Tyler couldn't stand up to a professional like the lawyer and ended up being told what to do. Our properties will be split equally, all thanks to my lawyer. Tyler had almost exhausted his savings on a trip abroad with Baker, so he was tight on cash. My lawyer guessed that Tyler would be very uncooperative, but in the end, I was pleased with the situation. Now, about what happened afterward, it seems Tyler is living paycheck to paycheck, having difficulty supporting himself. On top of that, he had additional expenses like cleaning out and paying rent for the rental apartment of my in-laws, and apparently, he got dumped by Baker. Initially, Baker was very ambitious and got close to Tyler for her own career advancement. After our divorce, the affair was exposed, and Tyler got demoted. It seems Baker got transferred to a remote branch. If Director Atkins is getting demoted, I don't need him anymore. Thanks for everything, that's what was said. And Tyler got dumped. Though Tyler got demoted, he didn't get transferred within the company, so he seems to be feeling out of place and uncomfortable now. Being dumped by Baker and all alone, Tyler has contacted me through my lawyer. "I messed up. I broke up with Baker, so I want another shot with you." That's what I heard through the attorney. Since I've already blocked Tyler's calls, it seems like his only option is to relay messages through the lawyer. Knowing Tyler's usually timid nature, the fact that he's pleading with a lawyer like this tells me he's really backed into a corner. On top of that, he's been saying things like, "I'm seriously out of money right now. Can you lend me some from your savings back when you were single?" Making demands that don't benefit me in the slightest. Even the attorney seemed taken aback by this and related it to me with a chuckle. I guess Tyler's going to have a tough life from here on out. Frankly, I hope he continues to struggle and squirm. By the way, I got in touch with Baker through the lawyer, and she responded in a very respectful way. I was told through the lawyer that she said, "When I was with Mr. Tyler, my expenses were quite low, so I had fun with his money. But it did not last long. Please tell her I deeply regret everything." It seems she was never really interested in Tyler, just his position. Tyler was head over heels for Baker, and to see him ruin his life over it is quite pitiful. Thinking of Tyler's misfortune made me smirk. Since then, I've decided to get back to work. Would you believe it? I took a part-time job at a convenience store. It's my first time in customer service, but it's surprisingly fun. I was initially worried about being on my feet all day, but once I started, time just flies and it's a blast. Beyond working the register, there's ordering products, frying snacks, and a lot more to convenience store work. I even get to use my housekeeping skills with the cleaning tasks. I've heard from the manager that if I work hard, I could become a permanent employee. Apparently, there have been others like me who made the transition. Being in my 50s is like being at the halfway point in life. Being divorced, I initially thought my future was bleak, but even at this age, I'm discovering new things and having a ball. I want to keep looking forward and keep on moving. That's how I feel right now.
Hey everyone, I'm Athena. I might be a bit older than most of the people here, but I've got a story you might find interesting. It's about how I got back at my ex-husband, Kingston, and his mom, Mary, nearly 8 years after we split up. Yeah, I'm single now. My marriage and divorce really shook me up, so I'm not in a rush to jump back into dating. But I'm feeling pretty good about getting even with Kingston and Mary. I met Kingston through a friend at work. He was my friend's cousin, and we hit it off at one of his family parties. At first, Kingston seemed like a great guy, charming and sweet, even though he didn't make a lot of money. I thought he was a good person, so I decided to give our relationship a shot. Things were amazing at first. We were like the perfect couple, always together and crazy about each other. But as time went on, Kingston started acting strange. Instead of being affectionate, he started making weird demands. He said, "Why do you live so cheaply? Athena, you make plenty of money, but you never spend it on us or yourself. I'm surprised your friends even want to hang out with you. You don't meet their standards." I replied, "I've told you before, Kingston, just because I earn more money doesn't mean I should blow it all on fancy things. I have plans for the future, and I like saving up for them. It's not about hiding money. I just prefer to be responsible with it. You're just being selfish and not sharing with me," he accused. "That's not true, Kingston. I do treat you sometimes, and I don't ask much in return." I defended myself. "Well, it's not enough. I want a better life than this. I don't think I can be with you if you're going to be so stingy," he said, hurting my feelings. His words stung, but I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was being unfair to him. After all, I did earn a lot more money than he did, so I thought maybe I should spend more money on him. I bought into that idea and went along with it. I was happy with him for a while, and we even got married. But foolishly, I ended up paying for most of the wedding myself. I also ended up covering more than 70% of our household expenses. At the time, I thought I was just doing it for my partner. I never imagined I'd be taken advantage of like this. A few months after we got married, Kingston's mom moved in with us out of the blue. She just showed up with her suitcases and declared, "So, Athena, you must be surprised to see me here. Well, I'm going to live here from now on." I was shocked. "Wait a minute, Mary. Who said this was okay? You can't just barge into our house and make decisions like this." But Kingston brushed it off, saying, "Calm down, Athena. I invited Mom over. She'll be staying with us now. Why are you being so dramatic? It's just my mom. She can't work forever." But we never talked about this. "Kingston, why would you decide something like this without discussing it with me?" He replied, "Look, you earn enough money to take care of the three of us." So, without even considering consulting me, Kingston insisted that his mom living with us was my responsibility since I was the one with the money. He basically said he didn't need my permission to bring her into our house. I was really mad at both Kingston and Mary for disrespecting me like that. But I felt stuck. Our house was rented in both our names, even though I was the only one paying the bills. Kingston hardly ever had any money to contribute. In the 5 years we were together, he never once bought me a gift. Now, I'm not saying I need fancy presents, but his lack of effort in our relationship really bothered me, especially after we got married. And on top of all that, I was stuck footing the bill for his mom, who didn't even help out around the house. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I vented to a coworker about Mary and Kingston, and I noticed his expression change. It was clear he was hiding something. When I pushed him for more details, he dropped a bombshell. Kingston had a gambling addiction and had even lost his previous job for stealing money to fuel this habit. I felt like my whole world was crashing down. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but then he sent me screenshots of their conversation, including pictures of Kingston gambling with other girls around him. It made me feel sick to my stomach. I went straight home and confronted Kingston. I said, "I know all about your gambling, Kingston. I also know you got fired from your last job for stealing. What's wrong with you?" He scoffed. "Oh, please, Athena. Not everyone wants to be a middle-class worker like you. I'm going to make millions from gambling. I'm getting pretty good at it. Soon we'll be rich." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're out of your mind, Kingston. How are you even getting money to gamble with?" He replied, "Oh, your savings account had some cash in it. Came in handy for my games. I was stunned when he admitted to stealing from my savings. One betrayal wasn't enough. There was another one coming. I had no clue Kingston was secretly dipping into my hard-earned savings. It devastated me. Started yelling at him for touching my money. I had worked tirelessly for years to save it, and now it was all gone because of Kingston's gambling. As we argued, Mary came over to see what was happening. Not surprisingly, she took Kingston's side. She said, "My son is smart. He'll make it big through gambling. You're fighting with him for no reason. Your money is his money, and he can spend it as he pleases." I was livid. No, absolutely not. That money was earned through hard work and sacrifice. It contributed almost everything to the household. I didn't even know Kingston lost his job. He stole my money to gamble and pretended like he still had a job. Don't talk about my son like that. He's doing you a favor. You're not capable of being successful on your own. Only Kingston can make something out of his life. You're useless, she retorted. You've got some nerve calling me useless when all you've done is use my money. Neither you nor your son have helped me this past year. I've shouldered the family on my own, and this is what I get in return. I'm done with both of you. Kingston is just a failure who will never amount to anything in life. I'm leaving. That's when I made up my mind to divorce Kingston. Despite loving him, the betrayal was too much to bear. Plus, I couldn't stay with a man who had no qualms about using my money for gambling. Truth be told, I had been feeling weary of our marriage for a while. I knew Kingston would never change. He had proven that to me. So I made the decision to file for divorce. But getting a peaceful divorce turned into a nightmare. My ex tried everything to make me stay, from begging to blackmailing me about splitting my assets and paying alimony. His mom joined in, harassing me to reconcile with Kingston. It took months of legal battles for my lawyer to convince him to drop the alimony and asset-sharing demands. I threatened to press charges for stealing from my bank account, which finally made him sign the divorce papers. In the end, I lost a lot of money because of his gambling habit. But that didn't stop Kingston and Mary from hurling one last insult my way. They said, "You haven't won, Athena. You're nothing but a worthless witch. You might be earning a lot now, but one day I'll be richer than you, and you'll have to beg me for money. We won't forget this insult, Athena. You abandoned my son and me when we needed you. One day, you'll pay for it. Mark my words, Athena. Kingston will be more successful than you." I replied, "Let's wait and see what happens. A day will come when I'll make you eat your words. We'll see who ends up begging." After the divorce was finalized, I left my job to start fresh in a new state. I didn't want to be around Kingston's cousin anymore. Got a new job offer with a promotion, making it even more appealing. Over the years, I saved diligently, working hard and climbing the corporate ladder. After 8 years, I had enough savings to invest in the company I worked for. Following a meeting with company executives, I became a director. It was like a dream come true. Meanwhile, I heard Kingston continued his gambling habit and lost whatever little money and assets he had. He and Mary were moving to my state to escape their creditors. Kingston ended up marrying a wealthy heiress, Riley, whose father was a business associate of mine. Kingston complained about Riley and was suspicious of his new son-in-law. He also resented Mary and considered her a freeloader. I kept quiet, knowing it wasn't yet time to confront Kingston. I was leading a good life until I received an unexpected call from Mary. She informed me that Kingston had applied for a position at the company where I worked. I was curious to see if it was finally time to give Kingston his just desserts. Mary's call confirmed it. She gloated about Kingston's new life, saying, "Hello, Athena. This is Mary. I hope you haven't forgotten me." I replied, "How could I forget my dear mother-in-law, who mooched off me for 3 years and helped her son steal my money. Long time no see, Mary. What's this about? Mary continued, remember how you called my son a failure? Well, he's married to a beautiful girl and found a new job that pays him $120K per year. My son has become successful. It's your loss. I couldn't help but laugh. Her words were so ridiculous to me. Most of what she said was a lie, but she didn't realize I already knew the truth. She seemed quiet and confused when I finally calmed down enough to respond. First of all, dear ex-mother-in-law, Kingston only earns $60K a year. There's no need to lie. And yes, I already have all the information about him. I said. Mary seemed taken aback. What do you mean? Are you accusing me of lying? And who told you he earned $60K? No one had to, Mary. Do you want to know how I found out? My assistant interviewed him yesterday. I replied. Mary protested. That's impossible. There's no way you're related to the company. It's a big enterprise, and you're just a worthless woman. Well, here's some news for you, Mary. I'm a director at this company, so I know exactly how much Kingston can earn. And by the way, you're bold to assume he even got the job. I retorted. Mary tried to defend Kingston, saying he's smart and wouldn't have trouble getting the job. I countered by telling her that my assistant had placed him at the bottom of the candidate list, just like 8 years ago. No sane company would hire him with his record gap. I'd also hinted that I would inform Kingston's wife about their deception. Mary's demeanor changed completely. She started begging, saying Kingston had contributed to my success, and asking me to give him the job. I couldn't help but laugh at her request, considering everything they had put me through. I told her firmly that I wouldn't help Kingston. He was capable of ruining his own reputation, and I wouldn't vouch for him, not even professionally. I ended the call, and despite Mary's continued attempts to reach me, I didn't respond. Instead, I instructed my assistant to send rejection letters to all the unsuccessful candidates. Then I waited for Kingston to call me, knowing he would have my number from Mary. Kingston called me within an hour of receiving the rejection letter. I answered because I wanted to witness his humiliation firsthand. He sounded desperate, nothing like the arrogant jerk I divorced. What do you want, Kingston? I see my dear ex-mother-in-law gave you my number already. I said, Athena, I know you're one of the directors at the company I interviewed for. I just got the rejection letter. Please, do something. Help me get the job. I know you can help if you want to, he pleaded. I scoffed. Why do you think I would jeopardize my professional life for you? Do you think I'm crazy? You have some nerve to ask me for a job after all these years. He continued, Look, I know I didn't treat you right back then, but I was still your husband. We have some good memories. Please consider those and give me the job. My wife, Riley, will leave me if I don't get a job soon. I know you've lied to Riley about your financial situation. I interrupted. Guess what, Kingston? I know her family. Have her number from her dad. All I have to do is tell the truth, and she'll be free. Kingston went silent after hearing this. I knew I had struck a nerve. He immediately begged me not to tell Riley everything, but I hung up on him. Next, I texted Riley and asked her to call me. When she did, I introduced myself and explained the situation. Hi, Riley. My name is Athena, and I'm your father's friend. I also happen to be the ex-wife of your now husband. There are a few things you should know about Kingston. He's been lying to you. I began. What do you mean, Athena? What is he lying about? Riley asked. He's not as rich as he claims to be. He has absolutely nothing of value. You posted on Facebook that he got a $120K job, but he only applied for a $60K job, which he didn't get. I rebelled. What the hell are you talking about? But he told me. Riley trailed off. I know what he told you, Riley, but I've seen it on your Facebook. I know you might not believe me. I said calmly. You can ask your dad. He can easily find out if Kingston is lying. I suggested to Riley. But I don't understand, why would Kingston lie to me? She asked. Because he wanted to take over your inheritance and properties. He always wanted a luxurious life for himself, and he's a gambler, I explained. Unfortunately, we divorced because I refused to fund his lifestyle and support his gambling habits. His mother supports him. Anyway, I don't know what he told you, but that's the truth. You can ask around if you're doubtful about me. I don't want you to be stuck with a liar and a loser. Thank you for telling me, Athena. I'll dig for more information and find out, Riley assured me. Also, don't worry. I made him sign a prenup and only agreed to remove it once he gets a job. Looks like that won't be happening after all. With that, I finished my part of the revenge. The aftermath was glorious. Mary and Kingston initially kept calling me, begging for my help, while Riley uncovered the truth herself. Riley and her dad confronted him and then filed for divorce. Since Riley still had the prenup in place, none of her assets would go to Kingston. Instead, he would have to hire a lawyer to work through the divorce. Mary and Kingston continued harassing me until I threatened to expose them online, which made them stop contacting me. Last I heard, Kingston still comes by our company to see if there's a position open. I also heard from sources that Mary and Kingston are now constantly fighting about money problems. I guess now Mary will finally know what it's like to be stuck with a man-child for the rest of her life. The police suddenly announced, "We've urgently transported a child found in the car. You are under arrest." Shocked by the unexpected arrival of the police at my home, couldn't believe what I was hearing. What? I don't have a child, I responded in confusion. The officers seemed equally puzzled. They had identified the car's owner through the license plate, and it was indeed registered under my name. Could it be? Holding on to a suspicion, I rushed to the hospital where the child had been taken. There I saw a boy around 5 years old lying on an emergency bed. His face was red and rough, but my heart pounded wildly at the sight of his familiar face. From that moment on, my life changed dramatically with this child at the center. I am Emily, a 33-year-old who works from home. I started dating my husband Michael in college since we were in the same club, and we married after graduation. Despite being married for 10 years, we couldn't have children. We even tried fertility treatments. I learned that I had a condition making it difficult to conceive. My kind-hearted husband, Michael, reassured me, saying, "It's okay, let's live happily, just the two of us." My in-laws are nice people, and since my brother-in-law already had a child, they never pressured me. However, I felt bad for my parents, who were looking forward to their grandchildren. Fortunately, since I lived near my parents, I made it a point to visit them frequently. I also have a younger brother, John, who is 7 years younger than me. If only John had a child. Growing up, John was perhaps spoiled as the youngest child and started hanging out with bad influences around middle school. He claims it was because our parents compared him to me, the smarter and more accomplished older sister. From my perspective, our parents treated us equally. Regardless, John rebelled and caused a lot of trouble. At 20, he declared he was cutting ties with the family and left home, disappearing without a trace. Since then, I haven't seen him. Sometimes I browse old photo albums and reminisce. I often reminisce about the days when John, as a toddler, would toddle after me, calling me sis. One day, while working from home, my doorbell rang incessantly. Panicking, I checked the camera and saw the police standing there. The police suddenly announced, "We've urgently transported a child found in the car. You're under arrest." Shocked by this abrupt statement, I was at a loss for words. "What? I don't have a child," I replied, just as baffled as the officer. My mind was filled with questions. According to the police, a passerby noticed a car abandoned on the road with a limp child inside and reported it. The child was then transported by ambulance to the emergency room. When I asked about the car's location, they said it was in front of my parents' house. Unfortunately, my parents were away on a trip. The police had identified the car's owner from its license plate. While the car was indeed registered under my name, the person using it was my younger brother, John. I used to lend my car to John when he got his license, and he took it when he left home. Since then, the car had been left in front of my parents' house, only moved when it needed inspection and maintenance. Despite scolding him, my parents felt pity and took care of the vehicle's upkeep. Thinking that he might need it, I wondered who this child left behind the car could be. Hurrying to the hospital, I approached the bed in the emergency room and saw just the top of a small head peeking out from under a blanket. The curly, wavy hair instantly reminded me of someone. My heart raced as a childhood memory of John flashed before my eyes. Getting closer, I saw the face of a boy around 4 to 5 years old who looked strikingly like John. Could it be? As I was pondering this, I received a phone call from my mother, who was away and sounded panicked. John called and asked me to take care of his child. He said he left the child in the car because we were not home under this blazing sun. What should we do? I informed my worried and panicking mother that the child had already been taken to the hospital and seemed likely to survive. She seemed relieved and said she would be back soon. I understood my mother's feelings, that there was no time for a trip now. I knew this child was my brother's, but when was he born? And who is his mother? I explained to the police that the child was probably my brother's and decided to stay with the child. After that, I tried calling my brother several times, but I couldn't get through to John. Looking at the child, he seemed to be in pain. It was heartbreaking to see such a small body enduring so much suffering. At that moment, a nurse came and handed me the clothes the child was wearing after changing him into hospital pajamas. They were ragged and severely dirty, with the name Tom written on the tag. From his extreme thinness and the state of his clothes, it was easy to imagine that Tom had been raised in a miserable environment. That evening, my mother returned from her trip and rushed to the hospital. "John," she murmured, hugging Tom with tears flowing. Tom looked a lot like John. By the next day, Tom's condition had improved, but he still seemed very scared. I gently asked him, trying not to frighten him, "How old are you, Tom?" 5 years old, he answered, spreading out one hand and adding his fingers. "Wow, you speak so clearly." I praised him, stroking his head. He smiled for the first time, but he still seemed thin, pale, and small. According to the doctor, there were bruises all over his body. I persuaded the police to let us take responsibility for the child until we could contact John, and we somehow avoided a report being made. 3 days later, Tom was discharged. I didn't want to dress him in his tattered clothes, so I bought new ones and had him changed into them. He looked even more intelligent and cute in them. Finally, as we were leaving the hospital, I got through to John, but there was tremendous noise on the other end of the call. How could you leave him in the car under the blazing sun? He was taken to the hospital. I exclaimed. "He survived, didn't he? So it's fine," John replied nonchalantly. "He had bruises all over his body. Did you do this?" "Thomas is clumsy. I was just disciplining him," John retorted without a hint of remorse. "He's only 5 years old. He's just a child," I said, my voice shaking. "He can't even remember the letters no matter how many times I tell him. It's annoying. So I thought I'd leave him at our parents' house." John continued, shocking me with his harsh words. "I'm in the middle of a casino jackpot right now," he added, before hanging up the phone. Seeing my distress, Tom looked worried and began to shed silent tears. "It's going to be okay," I said softly, stroking his head. He was only 5, a time to be selfish and cry. But he didn't. It felt odd that he never called for his daddy or mommy. Imagining the reason made my heart ache. After discussing with Michael and my parents, we decided to look after Tom in our home. I made a kid's lunch with hamburgers and fries, decorated with character flags. When I placed it in front of Tom, his eyes sparkled. "I've never seen anything like this. Can I really eat it?" he asked. "Of course, I made it for you," I replied. I loved the way he ate it, with ketchup all over his mouth and a big smile on his face. In the evening, Tom played around in the bath with Michael, laughing and enjoying himself. At night, I would read him picture books while lying next to him. He listened intently with sparkling eyes, but would suddenly look at me with an anxious expression. "Can I stay here forever?" "Don't want to go back home anymore," he asked. "I get it. You want to stay here, right?" I said. Tom nodded with relief, and it was heart-wrenching to see him that way. As the days went by, he became even more attached to me and Michael. When I was folding laundry, Tom would come over and offer to help. When I went shopping, he tried to carry my bags with his little body. Living together, I realized he was a kind and wonderful child. Michael and I grew so fond of him that we started discussing adopting him, especially if John and his partner weren't planning to raise him. When I checked with the city office, I found that my brother and his wife had registered Tom's birth and that on the certificate of residence, the parents and Tom were listed as living at my parents' house. We started consultations at the family court about a month after we took in Tom. Then John and a young woman came to visit. "Hey, thanks for taking care of Tom." "Ugh," John said. "I don't want to go back," Tom exclaimed, hurrying to hide behind me. He must have had some frightening experiences. After years without seeing him, my brother looked more aggressive, and his clothes were unkempt. The young woman with him, who introduced herself as Risa, wore numerous piercings in her ears and nose and looked flashy, like a playgirl. "How did you know where I live?" I asked. I asked Mom. "By the way, sis, you're living in a nice house and having a great life, huh? I have something to discuss regarding Tom. Let me in." I didn't feel good about it, but I couldn't refuse when it was about Tom. According to my brother, he had married this woman shortly after leaving home. They had been moving around frequently, and there were times when they lived in their car because they had no place to stay. While looking around my house, my brother suddenly got to the point. "I heard from Mom that you don't have any children, right? You've been married for 10 years with no kids, so you probably can't have any, can you?" "What are you trying to say?" I asked. "We've got a great idea. If you want Tom, how about it? But it won't be for free." I was stunned by the audacity of him trying to sell his son for money after having tried to leave him with our parents because he was annoyed. I was burning with anger. "John, what do you think your child is? He's not an object." "What?" Ding so high and mighty. I became rebellious because you're too serious. Our parents always sided with you. It's funny how you blame our parents and me for your own lack of success. "Shut up. Just give me the money," John demanded, enraged. John raised his hand to hit me, but at that moment, Tom, who had been hiding behind me, stepped forward and spread his arms to protect me from John. Seeing this, I became even more determined to protect Tom. Selling a child for money was unthinkable. However, I decided to give John and Risa the $13,400 I had saved as a settlement. I also had them sign an agreement that they would never get involved with Tom again and obtain their consent for the adoption. Risa remarked, "It's refreshing not to have to raise such a troublesome child," surprising me with her coldness. Once the procedures were completed, The two took the money, smirked, and disappeared. And so, Tom truly became our child, and we completed the necessary legal procedures. The following days were nothing but happiness. Tom grew up healthy, and we, as a couple, spent our days filled with smiles and joy thanks to him. During this time, we noticed Tom's talents and wanted to nurture them. However, another incident occurred 15 years later. Once again, my younger brother and his wife came to visit. John had grown a scruffy beard, his hair was messy, and he looked rather thin. Although he was only 41, he didn't look it. The woman also had no makeup and was wearing dirty clothes and torn plastic sandals. It was immediately apparent that they had fallen on hard times and were living a rough life. I had a bad feeling, as their visit couldn't mean anything good, and my reliable husband Michael was out at work that day. "What brings you here?" I asked. "I need some money," John replied. "Why should I give you any money?" I asked, surprised. I thought Tom was just a stupid brat, but he got into a prestigious university's medical department, didn't he? John said. It seemed he had met someone from our neighborhood in a local tavern and heard about Tom. In reality, Tom was very intelligent. He had been top of his class since elementary school and even got into a prestigious medical school straight out of high school. "That's no longer your concern, is it?" I said. "It's a big deal. He's my son, and since he's such an excellent son." "I thought I'd take him back," John said. "What?" I exclaimed in shock. John smirked and said, "If you don't like it, give me the money. How about you give me $33,500? John demanded. "Sister, didn't I already give you $13,400 15 years ago?" "That's a different story. I can't give you that money," I said firmly. When I refused, John grabbed my collar and threatened me, asking if I wanted to get hurt. I felt more pain in my heart than in my body, looking at my thoroughly rotten brother. At that moment, someone shouted, "Stop it," and grabbed John's arm. It was Tom, who had grown into a sturdy 20-year-old. John was easily subdued and ended up lying face down on the floor. John's wife, seeing the grown-up Tom, said sweetly, "You've grown up. I'm your mom. I've wanted to see you." But Tom firmly declared, "My only parents are the mom and dad of this house. I remember the horrible things you did to me when I was just 5. I experienced love the first time when I came to this house. You are not my parents." Even after hearing Tom's words, the two didn't seem to give up. So I showed them the agreement we made 15 years ago. The agreement stated, we will have no future involvement with the child. If we do not comply, we will be sued. You've broken your promise. I'm calling the police, I said. They were visibly shaken, making excuses that they had completely forgotten about it. Actually, we are being pursued by debt collectors. Without $33,500, we're in deep trouble. So don't be so cold. Help me out, sister. You are rich, aren't you? John pleaded, his earlier threats now turned into begging. I can't help you. The moment you abandoned Tom, you severed ties with me too. I have no brother anymore. I replied coldly. Please, he pleaded. But I coldly rejected him. Helping him now would only encourage him to continue his behavior. As I was about to call the police due to their insistence, they reluctantly left. Later on, heard that the couple had been caught shoplifting and seemed to be in jail, leading a miserable life. Meanwhile, Michael, Tom, Anna continued to live a peaceful and happy life. Seeing Tom, who wants to become a doctor to help those suffering from illnesses, makes me really happy. Thinking about it, we were able to live every day with laughter thanks to Tom. We hope to continue living happily together. The man I was going to marry, Tom, said something troubling right before our wedding. Women should just take care of the house and children after getting married. A wife should obey her husband, right? This was during a TV show about successful businesswomen. I decided to marry him, but I kept a secret plan. Tom kept telling me, "Make sure you listen to what I say. The man of the house is me. Don't talk back." His old-fashioned ideas about men being in charge became more obvious. He said all the housework, childcare, and even taking care of others were my jobs. He wouldn't accept anything less than my best. When I asked what would happen if I failed, he laughed and said divorce. Then he mentioned I'd owe him $660,000. I asked how I could pay that. He said, I have no choice but to obey him. Tom was in for a surprise. Before we got married, I kept a big secret from him. I'd owned 3 buildings. So when he talked about $60,000 like it was a lot, I told him I could easily give him $6 million if needed. He didn't believe me. When we eventually divorced, I decided to pay him that $6 million. Tom's attitude changed completely. He begged for forgiveness. My name is Julie, and I turned 34 this year. My husband, Tom, is 10 years older than me. Because I lost my father when I was young, maybe I saw a bit of my late father in Tom. We met through a friend. Julie, you like older guys, right? My friend asked. There's someone at my workplace who might be your type. Want to meet? Sure, I'll give it a try, I said. That's how I met Tom. He was 10 years older but looked young, and we got along well. Thanks for coming to see an old guy like me today. I enjoyed our conversation. Would you mind meeting again? Tom asked. Yes, I'd like that. After just a 2-hour dinner, we felt a special connection. We started meeting weekly. After 6 months, Tom proposed, and I said yes immediately. Are you sure about me? He asked. Of course. Tom was incredibly kind. I felt spoiled by his attention. As time passed, I started thinking about marriage. Then my mother called. She needed to talk to me about something. Julie, my father used to run a construction company before he passed away. It was a big business, but after he died, it went to my uncle, who was the vice president. My mother inherited my father's real estate properties and asked if I could take over managing them. She looked exhausted, and it was hard to say no. You're the only one I can rely on, Julie, she said. But what do I need to do? I don't really understand. It's okay. I'll teach you step by step, I assured her. I agreed to help because it was my mother's request. As I officially took over the real estate, Tom proposed to me. I was thrilled and accepted immediately. But things changed after we got engaged. One day, while watching TV at my house, Tom made a troubling remark. Women should just stay at home after getting married and take care of the house and children. A wife should obey her husband, right? Yeah, I guess, I muttered, caught off guard. The TV was showing successful businesswomen, highlighting how married women contribute to society. But I'm working right now, aren't I? Oh, I forgot to mention, but you'll quit your job, right? Tom said casually. What? That's obvious, he added. I was confused because he had never shown such an attitude before. Then Tom made another comment that shocked me. I hate women who have unnecessary assets like that woman on TV. Why? I asked. After getting married, it's normal to support your husband, right? He replied. His words made my heart race. Tom then mentioned meeting my parents, leaving the decision to me. After Tom left, I called my mother immediately. Tom and I are planning to visit you soon, I told her. We'll be expecting you. My mother said about the inheritance I recently received. If you want to keep it a secret from Tom, that's okay. I was scared to think about what would happen if Tom found out. I felt trapped because I had already accepted his proposal. Apart from this issue, I thought Tom would be the ideal husband. As time passed, Tom's views about women became more extreme. Make sure you listen to what I say, he told me on the first day of our marriage. His old-fashioned ideas about male superiority got stronger. I'm the man of this house. Don't talk back, he said. By this point, I had quit my job and become a full-time housewife. I wasn't planning to talk back anyway. Good, Tom said. From that day on, I became more cautious around Tom, always following his lead. However, something joyful happened in the midst of this life. 4 months into our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. "You're pregnant. Well done," Tom exclaimed. "Thank you. Now I'm going to be a father," I said. Tom was very happy, and seeing him like that made me smile too. During my pregnancy, he took care of me, and I thought this wouldn't change after giving birth. But then things shifted. "Now that our baby's born, make sure you do all the housework and childcare," Tom said. "What? Aren't you going to help?" I asked. "I work. Everything inside the house is your job." "Okay." I was speechless at how much Tom had changed. With a newborn baby, I couldn't argue much. We named our baby girl Lily. True to his word, Tom barely participated in childcare. The only time he got involved was when friends visited, and that was just for appearances. "Have you been neglecting the housework lately?" Tom asked sharply. "No, I'm doing everything," I replied. Tom stood up from the sofa, walked to the window, and ran his finger along the window frame. "How is this being done properly?" he said, noticing a slight dust on his finger. I'd almost wanted to retort, feeling like he was a nagging in-law. "I never thought you'd be a woman who couldn't even do this properly," he continued. "Lower your voice, please. Lily will wake up," I whispered. "Don't talk back to me," Tom said, raising his arm threateningly. Just then, Lily started crying, and he stormed off to the bedroom. I picked up Lily and spoke to her gently. "Did you help me?" "Thank you," I said, and she soon stopped crying. This moment made me decide to protect Lily no matter what. Tom and I talked less, but one day he came home smiling. I tentatively asked, "Something good happened?" "Yeah, kind of. My mom's health is improving," he said. His mother had always been frail and often hospitalized. I thought it was just another update about her, but it was more serious than I expected. "Mom's coming back home, but I'm still worried about her," Tom said. "That makes sense. Hey, don't talk like it's someone else's problem. You're going to take care of her," he continued. "Take care of her? You mean you want me to look after your mother?" I asked. "You catch on fast," he laughed. "At least once a week, go check on her. I've already told her." "This is so sudden. You're not planning to abandon her, are you?" I asked. "Of course not," he replied. I had no choice but to agree, since the message was already conveyed to my mother-in-law. The next Saturday, I went to her house with Lily. When we arrived, my mother-in-law greeted us with a smile. "Welcome, Julie. Sorry to make you come all this way," she said. "No problem." "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Thanks to you, I'm doing well," she replied. "That's good to hear. I brought Lily today," I said. Although I was upset about Tom's unilateral decision, I didn't dislike my mother-in-law. Time with her became a precious respite for me, and it seemed to be the same for her. Our bond deepened after I started visiting her regularly. One day, she suddenly apologized. "I'm sorry, Julie." "Why the sudden apology?" I asked, surprised. "It's about Tom. If you're unhappy, you can leave him," she said. "What?" I never expected such words from her. Though I never complained about Tom. Perhaps she sensed something from my expressions. "I can tell, even though you don't say anything. I see my younger self in you," she continued. My father-in-law had passed away from an illness about a year before I got married. I had never met him and knew little about him, just vague stories from Tom. "You had a hard time too, didn't you?" "Back then, it was even worse," she replied, smiling but with a hint of regret. "So what's it really like with Tom?" "Well," I hesitated. "That reaction means it's pretty bad, huh?" she sighed. "Don't hold back, it's just us here." So I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. "I had no idea it was this bad. What should I do?" "It was like a life consultation," she said. "Like I said before, don't suffer in silence. I don't want to see you in pain." "Thank you," I said. That conversation made me seriously consider divorce. "You can always talk to me, and of course, I won't tell Tom," she assured me. Most people would naturally take their son's side, but she was different. Perhaps she sympathized with me because we shared similar experiences. It felt good to have her support. When I got home, Tom was drinking. "Hey, you're back. I'm out of booze. Go buy some." "I need to put Lily to bed first," I said, heading to the nursery. "Your husband comes first," he yelled. Turning around, I saw him throw the beer can he was holding. I didn't have time to dodge. Fearing the can might hit Lily, I instinctively shielded her. The can hit my back, but fortunately, I wasn't seriously injured. "What if you hit Lily?" I demanded. "What? It's your fault for being there. I just threw it. You're the one who got in the way," he snapped. I glared at him and walked away, overwhelmed with anger. Is this what a husband and father is supposed to do? I thought. Suddenly, he barged into the room. "Get me booze now, or who knows what'll happen," he threatened, staggering, clearly drunk. I reluctantly agreed, fearing his wrath if I refused. "Okay, I'll go now." "Thanks," he muttered. I went to a liquor store and returned to find him asleep on the sofa, snoring. I wondered what I was doing for such a man. The only good thing about marrying Tom was having Lily. The joy of our first meeting was long gone. I needed to talk to my mother-in-law soon. As usual, I visited her on the weekend. We had a great time, but when I returned home, Tom was furious. Confused, I asked why he was so angry. "Why are you so angry?" "You know why," the hospital called. "What did you do?" he shouted. "What?" "I did nothing," I replied, bewildered. "Don't lie. My mom collapsed and was taken to the hospital." "That can't be true. She was fine when I left," I said, confused and speechless. Tom hurled more insults at me. "Why do you think I sent you to take care of my mom?" "She was fine when I left the house," I insisted. "You think you can fool me with that lie?" Tom retorted. "I'm not lying," I said, increasingly frustrated with Tom's accusations. Fearing for my daughter Lily's safety, I have been considering asking for a divorce. Housework, childcare, and caregiving are your jobs, right? "I won't tolerate anything half-done," Tom said. "I've been trying my best and will continue to do so," I replied. "You're not doing a good job even now," Tom mocked me. "So what happens if I can't do it?" I fought back. "It's obvious, isn't it? Divorce. And of course, you'll owe me $60,000 in alimony," he said. $60,000. You can't pay that now, can you? You have no choice but to obey me. Why $60,000? It's because of my mom, and besides, you're causing me trouble. It's a fair demand, he claimed. But Tom was greatly mistaken. I was not without money. In fact, I had assets hundreds of times greater than his. Before getting married, I had hidden the fact that I owned 3 buildings. I thought there was no need to hold back any longer. Don't talk about meager amounts like $60,000. I could give you $6 million, I said. What kind of joke is that? You can't pay that much. Are you crazy? He asked. You'll see if we get divorced, I said firmly. Are you serious? You'll be the one in trouble if you divorce me. We'll see about that, I said. The next day, I took Lily and left the house without saying anything to Tom, who didn't try to stop us. I went straight to the hospital where my mother-in-law had been taken. Are you okay? I asked. Julie, you're here. Tom told you I was in the hospital, didn't he? She asked. Yes, he did. Tom exaggerates too much. I've never been strong to begin with, she laughed it off. I felt a bit guilty for feeling relieved. I came today for another reason. You've made up your mind, haven't you? She asked, as if she already knew. Yes, I decided yesterday I couldn't bear it anymore and left this morning. I think that's good. You look more lively now. Really? I asked, surprised by her support. I felt I could share my long-hidden secret with her. I fully support you, Julie. I've made up my mind as well. I was nervous about her reaction. Taking a deep breath, I told her, Actually, I've been hiding something from Tom. Hiding something. Tom always thought I had no money because I didn't work, but that's not true. What do you mean? I inherited real estate from my mother. I'm the owner of 3 buildings. I braced myself for criticism, But her reaction was unexpectedly positive. Wow, that's amazing. No need to hide that. But with Tom. Oh, I see. Tom's views on male superiority were extreme, weren't they? Yes, I realized it might be a problem. But by then, I had already accepted the proposal, I explained. It's hard to say no in that situation. But you're going to tell Tom, right? Yes. I know it's weird to say this in front of you, but no need to be reserved now. Just do what you feel is right. Her words cleared any doubts I had. I planned to reveal everything after the divorce to make him regret it. That's great. I'd love to see his face then. After talking it all out with my mother-in-law, I went back to my parents' house. My mom accepted everything without question. I left Lily with her and started preparing for the divorce. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized smoothly. Tom didn't say much then. 3 days later, he confronted me. What did you do? He demanded. What do you mean? My account. There's an insane amount of money in it. Oh, that. It's the alimony I promised you. But $6 million is unbelievable. I had actually transferred $6 million to him. To me, $6 million wasn't a significant amount. I owned luxury condominiums worth millions each unit. Don't worry, it's all my money. That's crazy. If you can't believe it, come to this address. You'll see for yourself, I said, giving him an address before ending the call. About 30 minutes later, I saw him approaching. It was unmistakably Tom. I've been waiting for you. What's at this place? He asked, looking around. Just look around. He looked around. We were standing in a plaza surrounded by 3 buildings. Just a bunch of condominiums. Yes, these luxury condominiums. They're mine. So, what? You live here? No, I own these condominiums. Owner? He still didn't seem to grasp the situation. I've been quiet about it, but I inherited them from my mom. So yes, I own these apartments. You, owner of luxury condominiums? He looked shocked. That's the truth, believe it or not. Since when? Just before you proposed. You hid this all along? Why didn't you tell me? You might not remember, but you were always saying things like a wife should obey her husband and women shouldn't have money. For that reason, I decided not to tell you. That's a big deal for me. He looked frustrated, but arguing seemed pointless, so I decided to end the conversation. Well, it doesn't matter now. We're divorced. It's none of your business anymore. It does matter. You deceived me, so you owe me. I already gave you $6 million. That's not enough. Give me more. There's no way I'm giving you more. Oh, and you should take care of your mom, right? I know that without you telling me. Good, then we have nothing more to talk about. As I was about to leave, Tom called out to me. Wait, just hear me out. Is there more? I really want to go home. It'll be quick. Then make it quick, please. Do you have any intention of starting over with me? No, I answered immediately. Tom's prideful nature meant he could only speak in a condescending tone. If you wanted to start over with me, you'd need to change your attitude first, though that's probably impossible. Tom seemed to be thinking deeply, looking down and then looking up. He said something completely different. Please, let's forget the past. Lily needs a father, doesn't she? Lily will be fine without a father. She probably doesn't even recognize you as one. That might be true now, he admitted, looking defeated. But I truly regret everything, Tom pleaded. I'm not fooled by such acting. You just regret losing the money, don't you? No, it's not like that. I mean it. Tom begged me, but I was tired of it all. I have no expectations from you anymore. Goodbye. I left, laughing. Looking back, Tom hadn't moved. Such a foolish man. He will probably live his life filled with regret. Later, I called my mother-in-law. Hello, Julie. What's up? I actually paid Tom, but I have a favor to ask. I understand. Leave it to me. By then, my mother-in-law had been discharged and was back at home. I asked her to make sure Tom used the money for her house's barrier-free modifications and living expenses. Due to his pride, Tom ended up giving her an amount exceeding $2 million each month. A friend also told me about Tom quitting his job, bragging about having received money. He seems to have quit his job. Really? Yeah, he's been telling people it's because he came into some money. Oh, I see. Did you have something to do with this? Well, just a little. Of course, such actions were unlikely to lead to anything good. He's spending it all on gambling, alcohol, and women. Hardly anything is left now. He truly became a worthless person. Just the other day, he came to my house asking for money. Really? But don't worry, I didn't lend him anything. What is he even doing? It's embarrassing to admit he's my son. Thank you for everything. I'm counting on you in the future. Lily and I moved to one of my luxury apartments. Our life was comfortable, and she was growing up healthily. I still keep in touch with my mother-in-law, and it seems like we'll continue to enjoy our lives.